So welcome to Social Sessions. Today we are joined with Jim McFadyen from the Vortex Centre, and we will be getting into that in a lot more detail later on. But how are you, Jim?
I'm pretty good, Sean. I'm pretty good.
Really good to have you. It's been in the pipeline for a while. So obviously what we do is kind of just go back to everybody else's own kind of growing up, where you grew up, Jim. So what was your kind of childhood like? Where did you grow up?
Grew up Carluke. Normal childhood, I suppose. I came from working class backgrounds. Mum and dad started with nothing. Families after the war, rebuilding after the war, and grew up loving environment. Mum and dad couldn't really ask for anything more than they gave us. And we grew up basically, work hard, earn the money, buy the stuff, do the things. That's how, my mum and dad, that's how they raised us. They started with nothing. They didn't have to lose. My dad was very successful. My mum played a huge part in that. And we had a great kind of childhood, looking back on it, and thinking all the different ways we were blessed. Mum and dad made a few quid, a right few quid, which they enjoyed. My dad had a fantastic time. Looking back, like they started with nothing, as he said, he started with fuck all, so fuck all to lose. So every penny they earned, and he made a lot of money. His business was the first ever PVC windows, so the plastic windows in Scotland. He was one of the first that did that. So he was always ahead of the curve, always very kind of, wouldn't say greedy, but he had a keen mind for making money and being busy, and that's what I grew up in, Sean, just everything that we needed, everything we desired, you went, you worked hard for it. And from a young age, I was only, I believe, one thing was in this earth was to play football. That's all I ever really did. For 2 years old, the same as so many people, I've seen enough people in this. That's what I grew up with. I wanted the desire to play football for 2 years old, all the way up to, probably 13 years old, when I had a significant kind of life-changing event by the way of vaccination that changed my life. But up to that point, bursting my energy, everything going well, playing football, scoring goals, having fun, just boundless energy, and really kind of happy as a Wayne. And then at 13 years old, things changed a wee bit, where I got vaccination, BCG at school, and then became really sick off the back of that. And then from that point forward, from having this really kind of very similar to the stuff that I do now, this devotional drive, I think I've always been an addict in one way, shape or form. And it was football was my addiction, and healthy living, even at a young age, and this desire to be a professional footballer. I was definitely good enough. I could score goals for fun. But when I came back from the vaccine illness, I was off school for probably 3 or 4 months, spent a fair bit of time in bed. At one point I was too sick to be hospitalised. I had like double pneumonia in my lungs. Wow. And then came back and wasn't really right ever again. Not long after that, at the time there was interest for different kind of football teams. Manchester United had come onto the scene, and at the time it was Celtic and United. Celtic was my team growing up. Manchester United as well. Went down to Manchester, went through the kind of week-long trials, and then sat with Alex Ferguson in the kind of executive suite. And the intention was to sign for them when I was old enough. Left there, went back down to Chelsea. I'd been there a few times at the time. Again, too young to sign, and I was just scoring goals. Every time I played, I was just rattling goals in. But by that time, after the vaccine, probably, started to come off the rails in terms of my body wasn't the way it was before that happened. And I would just find myself viruses, chest infections, all different stuff. And then from probably 13 years old up to the age of probably 45, I was no well. That ultimately cost me a career in football. Ended up chucking it at 18, 19. After not playing for a couple of years, I signed with Motherwell. I literally never kicked a ball. And their head scout, a man called Bobby Jenks, was a Nottingham Forest scout at the time. They tried to take me down when Brian Clough was there. Quite funny. I found all the letters not that long ago for like 14, 15-year-old, all the letters to the school and all that kind of stuff. So just interesting. He went to Motherwell and signed me for Motherwell. And I went to Motherwell, played there for a couple of years, scored loads of goals both years. But was never well, was never kind of healthy enough. We'd be on the pitch, I would cramp up for the head down. I couldn't breathe. It was perceived as being lazy, which it certainly wasn't, but I just wasn't right. And then I gave it up at 19, chucked it. And then went down a different path, which, led me to the stuff that I'm doing just now, So from 19 to 24, 25, I basically went from being almost like a literal saint, where everything was geared towards playing football, and being successful. And I suppose like being that guy, you had your boyhood dreams. And then when that was gone, the option of getting back into the family business, which was always like a plan B, was never really my thing. It seemed like something I was going to do, and in the meanwhile I was going to kind of find my dreams, and then just started, getting off the rails a wee bit. Stopped playing football.
I think it would come to that, but certainly with the ex-football players and stuff we've had on here, seems to be when that career finishes, and it doesn't matter whether it's 19 or whether you're like 35, when that career finishes, there's a vacuum. And it's usually like some of the guys who either going to drink, addiction, or sex, women, whatever. Do you know what I mean? And was that kind of what you kind of found?
Choose your poison. We were meant to play. I was playing the second division with Queen's Park and with Rangers in like one of the first rounds of one of the cups, like a Wednesday night. And I'd played the 3-4 weeks leading up to it. I'd been sick, so I'd be like on the subs bench. I'd be no well. I'd play a few weeks, and I was actually at the time I was feeling pretty good. And I got dropped for the game against Rangers at Ibrox, and I just chucked it that night. I basically gave it up. I went for sitting, doing it with Alex Ferguson and been offered with Chelsea, and could probably went to Celtic at one point as well. And then, for that into, sitting playing second division in front of a handful of people and being no well and no enjoying it, so at that point, I definitely went off the rails. And at the same time, it was the kind of European city culture, Glasgow.
Of course.
89, 90, and drugs were just coming in, recreational drugs and dance music as well. So it was kind of like the perfect storm for me. I basically gave up my dreams of playing football, and then, went to the tunnel on like a Thursday night.
Was there resentment, Jim, in the way, like, you maybe resented that you never had that football career, which so it kind of took you into that?
Absolutely, Sean. When I look back at the time, not because I had a couple of years where Alex Ferguson would be phoning the house and like, what's happening, when are you coming back, kind of thing. Really at the time you're just trying to get your way like back through it to be playing again. I remember the first time I saw, and I went all over the place, for different specialists all over the world, and at one point they said it might be a chronic tear or a chronic strain, you'll never play again. That was at 15, 16. So for the first time since you've been away, it's like, right, okay, what am I going to do now? Right. But that healing phase, that healing of what you lost out on, and even now still, it amazes me to think about the stuff that I'm now doing, the stuff that I'm now talking about and teaching and sharing with people, to think where I came from, and my intentions back then, to how it's unfolded off the back of, what happened to me and what I went through. It's fascinating, but even until probably 6 months ago, I didn't realise that I had my heart broken, with the fact that I didn't make it at football, because it's the only thing, it's really the only thing that ever gave me joy. I absolutely loved it, as did so many of us, but I did nothing else, it was a bore for the minute you got up to the minute you went to bed at night time. So when that isn't there, then what do you do, and you're in this country, there's not that many things that you can do. Drink was never a thing for me.
And I think the West is just, as we've spoken about before, Jim, like obviously we've spoke, and I think the West has got so much on offer that it's no very good, do you know what I mean, that can attract you very, very quickly, especially these days. And if you're just lost your love and you don't, and you're unaware, you've not got that kind of awareness level yet. Young boy, lost your love, it's, as you say, it's a perfect storm.
And I had everything as well, Sean. I was successful. I had a few quid. I was working like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making money, like had all the nice clothes, all the watches, nice motor. We had everything, in terms of being a success. At me, 23, 24 years old, I had it all. But, strangely enough, having all of that, and being about that my whole life is what basically led to, well, it almost cost me everything. So it's been waves. I think that the healing journey, and I'm still on a healing journey, I've been on a healing journey my whole life, just didn't realise it, I suppose. But certainly over the last kind of 27, 28 years, the journey I've been on and all the different things that happened to you, not just at that stage, but dealing with the vaccination, dealing with other childhood stuff that, that I dealt with and other people deal with. It's not easy, and it comes up at different stages, and, the work that I'm now doing, fascinating, because looking back on it and seeing what you went through and the reasons as to why, you became who you became, and everything that went in between that, it's been a fascinating journey.
Well, definitely. I mean, obviously, I can testify to how well and the Vortex Centre works, and anybody that's kind of suffers any kind of mental health. I mean, you don't even to suffer vetting, but the experience is fascinating. It's a kind of magical place in there, Jim. It really is. And I think there needs to be more of that, and there is. But the quicker dopamine attraction and the kind of quicker, isn't that? It's like as we talk about drinking, drugs, women, and it's very widely available and probably becoming acceptable to a certain standard, which absolutely. I look at the world now and I'm like, where are we going? Do you know what I mean? And I see, obviously, I know you have your views in the world, but where do you see yourself, like, even back then, do you see a difference, or do you just see...
In terms of the world and how the world is, or in terms
of... like, foundationally, in the way that, like, you finished your football, so you were attracted to, like, the drink, drugs culture, blah, blah, blah. Do you see foundationally any difference, or do you think
the whole world's changing so fast, isn't it? I think back to, when I was young growing up, where divorce wasn't a thing. I think there was probably one lad in the entire school that basically came from a broken family. And then you fast forward to where we are just now, almost every single young male that I deal with, they've grown up in an environment where they are. So it's... I mean, it's terrifying to see how quick it's the progress, I suppose we would call it, or evolving. I don't really spend that much time in it. When I go into it and I see how bad it is, I think you need to see how bad it is. But you know me, Sean, I'm all about the, how we make it better, what's the solutions, how do we fix it? Because, focusing on it and seeing how bad it is, it doesn't work, and things go in the wrong way, so it's a fascinating time that we're in.
No, and I think obviously it's like this, I've tried to say, if we don't come together quick, we're going to be in trouble, and it's all about healing together and trying to heal things that people would probably laugh at you about, do you know what I mean? Say how you're going to get you'll never get the aim to sit down together, you'll never get the aim to sit down together. And as I always try and say, it's like the working class, the break, it's been the same strategy for a long time, Jim, it's for generations and no, even for millennia, it's been the same kind of way they've broke us up. But obviously your work kind of is a counter to that. So, and obviously you totally believe in your work and the solution and stuff, and I can testify to how very well it works. Do you know what I mean? So what would you say is needed to know in the world, Jim, more of? I know there's more love in that, but what would you say there's more, we need more of?
Reconnection. It's all about reconnection. There's a lack of awareness, in terms of how we get through our lives, how human beings. We sat in George Square there for 5 minutes and just seeing where people are. The world's broken. It is. I've known that for a long time now, that it isn't working, and people are getting sick. I see that every single day, the different levels of disease that the people are living in. There's something though, right, and you can label it any way you want, but what we do know is that we're in a really kind of difficult place just now. You look to the world in terms of what's the answers, how do we fix it? There isn't many of that, there's not much of that. We can talk about how bad it is and we can see the problems we face and we can absolutely pick a side and fight for that side, which is, as you just said, it's a big part of it. But there's no solutions in that, there's no fix in that. And I call it the separation game. How long it's been going and how far back it goes, I don't know. I think back to me growing up as a wee Celtic fan, and taught to hate Rangers. Really taught. My family came from Ireland way back, and my grandfather couldn't get a job after the war. The whole Irish, no Irish, no Catholics did apply, that kind of stuff. And so him with 9 kids after the war, couldn't get a job, couldn't feed his family. Obviously that feeds down, and then when we grew up as well, the time Ireland had the Troubles and all that kind of stuff, so I used to kind of question it. When I was young, I would question like why my pals that went out my bikes with, why I had to hate them when Celtic and Rangers were playing. I always used to, I had loads of kind of questions like this, the stuff that just didn't quite add up for me. And it's all part of the separation. You see it again just now with the Olympics, under the banner and under the flag and choosing your side and trying to, whatever it is. So for whatever it is that's causing it, I mean, you look at the world, in every single area that you could look at, it's not working, So at that point, how do we fix it? How do we get it back to the way that it's meant to be? And that's what this work is all about. That's the stuff that I'm doing within the Vortex, and it's an experience-based process. It's and it does need to happen quick, and it does happen quick. The people that come in and go through it, and the way, as I said, the way that it's unfolded for me, and the stuff that I'm now doing, and how that coming from my experience over the last 27 years and the work that I do. We don't have a lot of time. The clock is ticking, and the world is broken, and people are broken, and there's no many solutions. So how do we fix it? How do we get it back to the way it's meant to be?
I know.
And so the great reset that they talk about, I believe there's a absolute divine and a spiritual reset, and I've been talking about this for a long time now. This is just some of the last couple of years, but it's something that I absolutely do believe in. Again, because of my own experience, what I've been through.
Aye. So when did you kind of? Because obviously we've got a long spiritual journey which we're going to cover, Jim, but where did you, obviously, so you've stopped playing football, and then you've started getting working, you're a success on paper, you look great. Where does it start changing for you? What's the changing point?
I think the chemistry in the brain with the drugs, when you're partying every weekend. And I would still work 6-7 days a week, I was still chasing money and chasing the things. But every Friday and Saturday night I'd go out. And back then it was like one ecstasy tablet, that was it. And you were dancing for 6-7 hours, I never smoked dope, never chased it, I would go back, face the doom the next day, then get back to work on the Monday. And I was fitting Mondays at a time, and working building sites, so I was just that guy. And I think probably over time, probably just an accumulation of catching up with you, getting a wee bit older, and then, as with everything, the environment you're in, the people you spend time with, over a short period of time, it started to deteriorate, where it was starting to affect me in loads of different ways. Looking back, didn't know at the time, I was basically caught up in it. Wasn't really taking any more drugs, but at the time, a couple of things changed, and I started to get off the rails. And then the turning point for me, I went to Ibiza in 1996. And at the time, I had a full recording studio. I was DJing. One of my best mates, a really well-known DJ for Glasgow, he just got back into it. We'd been to Spain. He was DJing. I went to support him.
Aye.
And the plan was to become a DJ, which at the time I felt it was good enough to do.
And I think that's always like, as we were talking about this the other day, actually, like everybody's first job is a football player.
Really? I would never have seen that for me.
First football player, then DJ. You know what I mean? That's everybody's young.
Really, I didn't know that. So that was how it went for me. I went to Ibiza. An old mate of mine was his stag down. I went, and the first night I went there, I had a pill. I had a mental breakdown. And then
was that a bad pill or what?
Must have been. I just remember my head getting really, really sore and just being under like massive stress and having to get out of there. And then I woke up in the hotel room the next morning. And then for the next probably 5 or 6 days, I never took any more drugs the whole time I was there. But I just wasn't well, you know, walking about dehydrated. Don't believe I drank any water or ate any food for the rest of that time I was there. And then being around about, you know, San Antonio and watching it and seeing, you know, just that level of the police and what they were doing and the clubbers and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, after about 5 or 6 days, I was arrested. I was taken back to the military compound, back to the cells, and really wasn't well at all by this point. And what kind of unfolded over the next probably 7, 8, 9 hours, best described probably like torture, the things that they put me through, the beatings that they gave me, the things that they did to me. Especially for me being in that state, I'd basically a pair of kind of swim shorts on and a record bag. Funny, that's how they arrested me. No shoes, no nothing, no money.
They don't mess about there,
basically
do they?
Took me
Horrible.
back to the cells. No, they don't mess.
I know.
And they came in and I was in a hyper state by that point, you know, absolutely fight or flight. When they tried to arrest me during the day, the two police that tried to get me in the back of the van, they had no chance whatsoever. Like superhuman powers was coming through me at that point. You know, it just wasn't happening. And then they called in the military police and they got me in the back of the van, took me back to the cells, and then later on that night, first time they come in, probably 3 or 4 at a time. And this is when I kind of started my martial arts career for some reason. I don't know what happened. It was like the spirit of Bruce Lee come into me. It was fascinating. But they come into the cell and with the pistol whips, you know, they basically come in and they were basically trying to, you know, setting about me. And I managed to escape out and basically sneak past them and escaped out this military compound where the Spanish military basically chased me up the road, ran into a garage, thought I was safe, which was madness. And then they came in, big electronic cattle zapper, still got the mark in my eye, took me back to the cells. And then, all sorts of stuff, guns in my mouth, the water cannons, you know, stamping on my feet with the military boots on, basically smashed me up. Well, how I didn't die that night, I don't know, Sean. How I got through it, and, you know, how I managed to basically, whatever happened that night, that basically like, got me through it. Mm-hmm. I was lucky, my dad had a wee place in Mallorca at the time, a wee house in Mallorca, and he came and got me and took me back over there. And then from the summer of 1986 was when it happened, into the kind of like 5-star resorts, the hospitals, you know, and basically because they found drugs in my system, they put me into like a rehab centre. So they repaired my body, my hand was broken, my feet were smashed, my nose was broken. The heart surgeon in Mallorca couldn't believe that I wasn't dead because of the beating I'd had. They couldn't believe my heart hadn't burst, covered in hematomas, just really no well. And then very quickly, after probably a month, I was sectioned under the Mental Health Act in Spain and basically chained to a bed in a mental hospital. And spent the whole summer in 1986 in that mental hospital. The Atlanta Olympics were on at the time. So I was getting these things they called bazookas, these big drugs that would basically hold you down and bury them into you. And that'd be you for like 16, 18 hours just in a different world, you know, lying watching the telly. Whole summer in 1986, and they managed to stabilise my medication. And then 2 doctors in a private jet was the only way they let me fly back into the country. That's how sick I was. So I came back here, they put me straight into a drug rehabilitation centre, like a 12-step programme. But because of the drugs I'd been on to sedate me basically, the first 2 or 3 days I was in, it was just like a detox. I'd be sitting in these meetings one day in. And I'd never been in that environment before. Didn't consider myself an addict, you know, didn't really see my... Like,
different type of drugs you've been on and all about, isn't it? Like, they put you in that kind of environment.
Well,
like
they didn't know the drugs that I was getting in Spain. I don't think they were legal in this country. So it took a wee bit to find out what they'd actually been giving me. And I remember sitting on those meetings with like a glue serum coming out my eyes and my mouth, you know, and just sitting with this therapist, you know, asking you why you were fucked, basically, why you weren't well. You know, one of my first, and I'm going, this, I don't know what this is, but this doesn't work. So basically signed myself out of there, placed down the borders it was. Down towards Peebles, and then went home, which wasn't the best idea because I still wasn't well. But I hadn't been home since like the start of the summer. So this was me getting back into my own house, and then very quickly it became evident that I wasn't going to work. So, you know, my mum and dad basically tricked me to go for a second opinion, and they had to section me. One of the hardest things I've ever seen. I think back to my dad and what he did that day and put me into the hospital and leave me behind. It was heartbreaking, especially for who he is and what he's all about, you know. But it's what I needed at the time.
I know.
And then there was a kind of again a a stabilisation process of the medication to basically calm me down. And I was hyper at that time, you know, I was, the world was just, everyone was fantastic, bipolar, but only in one way, you know, really just up all the time.
Aye.
And then eventually after a couple of weeks, they basically managed to stabilise me and really bring me down. And that was the first kind of crash, I suppose, you know, back to earth. And then from summer of 1996 up to probably autumn time, 1997, between Hartwood Hospital it was, and Outwood Arm, the Priory in Glasgow, all the different therapies, you know, anything you can imagine. Mum and Dad, because they were, you know, they were doing all right, they could basically put the means to find out any answers, and there was nothing, Sean. Even the best and the best, you know, at the Priory and sitting in the meetings, and remember sitting holding an acorn and trying to describe, you know, childhood trauma, and you're just going, what is this all about?
This is new.
And at that time, Sean, stuff was, as I was going through that, there was loads of stuff starting to come up as well for childhood that I hadn't dealt with. You know, that I was verbalising, and for the first time it was like, holy, well, what is this? You know, I was in such a almost like an honest, truthful state. It was like, and this had to happen, this is what happened as well, and try to make sense of everything, you know. So it was between summer 1996 and up to January 1997, it was horrible. You know, I was in a place of, you know, just hopelessness, wanted to kill myself, absolutely, didn't want to go on. Every time I shut my eyes for probably 3 or 4 months, there was like guns going off my head because of what the soldiers had done. All the childhood stuff, the broken heart, the dreams, the vaccine, all that stuff was just coming to the head. And then at a point where there was really no way back, and I didn't think I was ever going to get back to the way that I was meant to be, or that I was before even in this experience. I remember up in Abbey with my wife, and I had no feelings, no emotions, just complete blackness, which is really hard to deal with. I remember saying to her,
I know, it's horrible.
I remember saying, I don't think I'll feel anything ever again. I was numb to the world and just didn't want to go on. And a short while after that, came back from Aviemore, probably January 1997, and I met a man that was working on this stuff. Back then, he was working on personal development, and he came in at a time, and I can't even remember how the session went together, but he basically did a session with me, laid me flat on my back, took me through some guided breath work, which would be like a yoga nidra, so basically de-escalated my stress. And at the end of the session, the most significant thing that he did, he basically gave me a hug and basically said, listen, son, everyone's going to be fine, and he gave me hope. And for somebody who is in a place of hopelessness, and I didn't know this at the time, I don't think he knows this to this day, but when you give somebody hope, because the doctors, especially in the Priory, the man that ran the Priory, he would see me coming and basically fuck off, you know, and you're looking at him like, just this guy. And with that system, it's all the pharmacology. I know. It's all the pills and the medication. That's how they balance it.
Fixing the symptoms into it rather than trying to fix the pain. It's like, what's the source of the pain? Well, the source of the pain gives me anxiety. Like, we'll give you that for anxiety, then we'll give you that for depression, we'll give you... And then you end up, you're on 3 or 4 pills, but you're not getting it. It's not hitting the root source at all, you know
suppression,
what I mean? Absolute
suppression, you know. So that's basically where this part of the journey started for me. That day, when that man came in, there was a light that came back on in me. Before that point, I was walking around about the supermarket with my mum, God rest her soul, you know, just somebody that really wasn't well. And then once he left that day, there was a light come back on in me. And I basically followed him about for the first probably 6 months. He was a martial artist at the time. He was teaching me some kind of basic self-defence. He'd been on a kind of personal development journey for a couple of years, even though he was a social worker. So he'd been to see Anthony Robbins a year before down in London. And he was really shy, the man. He was a kind of humble man, a proper kind of martial artist. Very quiet with his ways. He was talking about meditation. He was talking about, you know, how to heal. He was talking about, you know...
And was this all things you had never really heard of before, Jim?
Never. I always had a calling, Sean. See, when I was young, I remember even going to church. We had a fantastic priest, a beautiful man, a proper holy man. I remember asking questions about like God and spirituality and religion, always knowing the answers weren't quite in that, but I always had a kind of an interest, you know, in all that kind of stuff. But in terms of, you know, where I got to at that time, no, absolutely not. You know,
so all this stuff, like, I've been through this, or this the Priory, you've been all these places, and not one time did they ever like breath work, nothing like that? Nothing at all. In the Priory, it was funny, Sean. Every morning, I was in the Priory for a month probably, and I'd be up the whole night. I couldn't sleep at all, couldn't shut my eyes. And in the morning time, they did this relaxation session in the morning time. So I would get into this relaxation session, and I couldn't remember a single session, but I'd wake up at the end of it, and there'd be probably 30, 40 people, really know well, in all conditions, God bless them, and they'd be looking at you with just hatred in their eyes. And for years and years, up until probably a couple of years ago, I realised I basically, during the session, I'd been falling asleep and I'd been snoring the whole session. That's what been. So I was keeping them away. I was round there. The only break I was getting in 24 hours, I was basically fucking up the rest of the hospital. You know, I had a real giggle when I realised that, God, that's why there was so much, you know. So without me realising then what was happening, and that was probably keeping me alive at the time, getting that, even just a 45-minute break and switching off the nervous system. Now that I know about breath work and how it goes together and how the nervous system works, you know, what that man did that day, calm my nervous system. It gave me a literal break for the madness I was living. That level of chronic switched on stress, what I had,
That's why, you know, you see so many people getting to that point with the end of their lives, you know, and that's where I was, you know. So when you can switch that off, you know, you get a completely different perspective. It's like, what's the problems of the world? We're locked into this way of living, you know, we're in hypnosis, we're in ignorance. And for me, in that way, where life was happening to me in ways you can't imagine. It was getting worse and worse and worse. So you have no control over it. And then, you know, when he came in, basically stopped everything, you know, stopped me in my tracks. Some reconnection process happened. I remember I went completely out of my body. Never ever thought I'd been out of my body. And that day, this is again, 20 years later, I realised I'd been completely out of body. I was looking down at myself. And when I came back, you know, the lights were back on again. And for that day, January 1987, without telling anybody and never really mentioning it, I decided to go down a different route. You know, I was almost given like an olive branch and I pull out the hole. And being where I'd been, like chained to a bed in a mental hospital, what I did to my mum and my dad, what I did to my wife, who were still together, and my family, God bless them. The guilt, you know, the shame, the Catholic guilt, the Catholic shame, which I doubled onto that, or maybe purgatory even worse, you know, but it was horrible what I did to him. And the decimation, because the family was well known, and I was the prince of the fucking throne, you know, so the stories, I was running guns for the IRA, I was a heroin dealer, you know, you can imagine, the rumour mill, they loved it. So when it started for me, when I came out the other side of it, you know, it was personal development to begin with, that's how it began. I wanted to feel better, I wanted to, you know, go on this intentional journey, I suppose, and discover like how I could heal myself, how I could make myself feel better, what I had to do, because the pills, the doctors, the therapies, I'd sat in them long enough. I knew what they did to me, again through direct experience, not knowing anything about this stuff, but realising that it didn't work, you know. And then here's me, meets this man out the blue, teaches me to breathe, you know, gives me a wee bit of hope, gives me a cuddle. And then at that point, you know, I went on a journey, you know, so I was very quickly, I went back to work, the lights come back on, I started my own wee business, fitting windows, building houses, that kind of stuff. And without really realising what I was doing, I took everything out of my life, you know, so all my pals, the environment in terms of newspapers, the medical system, even what I was eating, I changed everything very, very quickly. I started to look into teachers, and at the time, my students laugh when I say this, there wasn't the internet. You know, so
you're looking at
it's bonkers.
How did you look up?
Well,
how did you?
The man I was getting the information from, there was a company called Nightingale Conant. Earl Nightingale was the first million seller of personal development information on cassette. The Strangest Secret, they called it. So they were releasing tape cassettes and books way back then. Mostly business, mostly personal development, but some of the stuff was about philosophy and...
This was Tony Robbins and all that.
Even before...
Were you looking into, like, did you start looking into, like, Aristotle and Socrates? Were you starting to read that kind of stuff, Jim?
Not at all.
Or did you know into that history? No,
not at all.
Personal development and what was going on in the world.
Who was current? How do you feel better? First course I went to was a man called Richard Bandler, who invented NLP.
Right.
So he was one of Robbins' teachers. Him and John Grinder, who invented NLP. The Robbins and stuff that he was teaching back, they were his teachers.
Aye.
So I spent 9 days with Richard Bandler, who is the foremost clinical hypnotherapist in the world. He was at the time.
Aye.
So he would basically, you would go in and he would start talking about his experiences growing up in San Francisco as a Hell's Angel. And he'd be feeding in stories about therapy, and you would sit for 4 or 5 hours. And you would leave and you would start to feel better. And after 9 days, when I left that course in London, I felt like a completely different human being. The entire week I was there, I heard it was Tony Robbins and how you need to go and see Tony Robbins.
I know, I've heard that. I do like Tony Robbins. There's a place for him, but I don't think he's the answer. But I think
well, back then it was very different, you know, in terms of the wave that was coming in again before the internet. And so I signed up for Tony Robbins and I went and seen him the following year, which was probably when would that be, 1998, 1999, and it was 10,000 people, you know, basically down in London, the old Wembley Twin Towers at London. And when you've been through what I'd been through, the stuff that I was dealing with, and you've got this man standing on stage in front of 10,000 people, one of the first things he did the first night was pull up a lassie at the stage who'd been sexually abused as a kid. She was in her mid-30s, and you could just see the decimation. And I remember turning to the man I was with and going, like, what the fuck does he do here? Like, how do you fix this? And I watched him in front of 10,000 people inside 15, 20 minutes. You know, the processes, a lot was NLP. I could recognise a lot of that stuff. You know, like all the kind of stuff that you do with the language and desensitising and stepping away, this sort of the picture, all that kind of stuff. And I watched what happened, you know, and that weekend basically changed my life. I get really into it by that point, changed my diet massively. I started juicing. This has gone back probably 26 years ago, so I've juiced almost every single day since. I started putting a lot more care and attention into my health, you know, taking responsibility for my health. And off the back of Robbins, there was so many at that time, you know, business teachers and with the tape cassettes and the books, people like Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, all talking about business, how to be successful. And very quickly, Sean, I realised that the answers for me were not going to be in personal development. I didn't want the things. Even Robbins then, as good as he was, and he's changed a lot. I saw him, I've trained him 7 times. Last time I trained with him was 2012. But I did his Date with Destiny course.
He's quite commercialised now, isn't he? But I mean, he's amazing.
He's helped so many people. And the time that he was in, if you see him and what he's doing and the level he operates at and how he manages to do it, it's incredible what the man does, you know. But very quickly for me, even after a couple of times when I saw him, I realised that the answers that he was trying to sell, they weren't for me. And being successful and motivation and getting the stuff, I knew where the stuff led to for me. So that's, my answers were not going to be there. And then for some reason, to this day, I don't know why, but at the same time, there was starting to be, there were certain teachers were talking about spirituality, they were talking about God, talking about meditation. And again, no, you know, previous real interest in it. You know, I had a connection when I was young because of the church. But for some reason, it just lit up. This path just lit up. And a man called Wayne Dyer, who was my teacher.
I've heard, like, obviously,
Wayne
he's
Dyer,
legendary, isn't he?
But they talk about Wayne Dyer as being the kind of, he ushered in this spiritual revolution back in the 70s and the 80s. And when he was starting to release books about God and meditation, it was just like the perfect
Did you
story.
manage to teach with him, like, alongside?
I met him twice. I've got signed copies of his books. My kids will get signed copies of his books. So he was the first. He was the introduction for me about spirituality, what spirituality was, the difference between that and religion, you know, what God was, you know, my perception of God, you know, growing up was some dude sitting there throwing me a Celtic strip on.
Sitting on a cloud with a big thing, with a big bolt of lightning.
Absolutely, you know, and the Catholic hymn, Our God Reigns, I always used to wonder, like, where do all the proddies go? You know, they must have their own heaven, or maybe they don't, maybe it's hell they go to, you know, so that always used to kind of confuse me a wee bit. So Wayne Dyer was talking about spirituality and meditation and what that was, and the answers within it, you know, and how it worked and how it went together, and then given, I suppose, a pathway into it by sharing his teachers. You know, and some of that stuff goes back 4,000-5,000 years. And at that point, meditation came in. You know, I started, like, the intention to meditate. And then from the very first day, you know, I got out of bed 3-4 o'clock in the morning. I got up, I sat in silence, you know, to go inside and to see what this meditation thing was all about. And now, kind of probably 26 years later, it's been every single day. I've never missed a day. I started this morning, 4:45 this morning. You know, up in my bed, a couple of hours meditation. I had a live class on at 5:30 this morning, guided breathwork meditation. It's just something that, for whatever reason, you know, when I get into it and I started with it, and the way that it unfolded in terms of the teachers, the books, the experiences, you know, how the trail unfolded, it was great for me because I had a lot of time to do it. Nobody knew I was doing it. For the first 17, 18 years, nobody knew about it. So I was just on this real devotional path. You know, changed my diet, changed my input, you know, started reading the books, started travelling a wee bit to see these teachers. But at the same time, I was doing the work on my own. I was going out of bed every single day, 7 days a week, sitting in silence. And for the first 10 years, I was really just healing myself. You know, I was healing myself for the childhood stuff, healing myself for the traumas, healing myself for that we've all got. You know,
it takes a lot of, like, it does take a long time, Jim, doesn't it? It's not like an overnight process where you, I mean, it can be, like, I certainly think, I was like what you were talking about. I remember I was in prison and I'd lost my PO. I was kind of really at a stage where I wasn't really bothered if I lived or died, kind of thing. And I remember a guy, it wasn't really doing, it was like hypnotherapy he was doing. And I never went, and they put me forward to do it. And same with you, I wasn't sleeping, hadn't had it, and he got me to breathe. And it switched. I remember I never had any thoughts in my head, and I was like, wow, like, it was like the first time I'd ever felt anything like that, and I was like, what did he just do there? And it was obviously, Neil, lovely guy, and obviously prison's a tough environment, Jim, so it's he wasn't getting enough, getting to enough, the message wasn't getting to enough people. But certainly I can see where you're coming from. So obviously you've started teaching with Wayne Dyer, and then where do you go for there? Because what was the kind of books you were reading? What was the first kind of books you started reading?
Back at the time, it was all about God, straight into God. And a lot of my work now is about kind of normalising God and what God actually means to me through my experience. So back at the time, it was like discovering what God was, you know, so books that were, you know, the ancient yogic aphorisms of Patanjali, which goes way back. These are all stuff that Wayne Dyer was talking about. Castaneda dived into his stuff, Ram Dass at the time, Deepak Chopra was there. But mostly Wayne Dyer, and mostly my own experience. I would get up every single day, and it was sometimes twice a day, where I would just sit in silence for 2-3 hours. A great quote that says, God's one only voice is silence. That's what started me off. And then right at the beginning, the Buddha's got a quote that basically says, when you hear the word enlightenment, nothing else will ever do. So I decided to become enlightened, Sean. I did. That was my plan, to experience enlightenment. I had no idea what it meant. I had no idea how I was going to get there. But I got up every single day, never told anybody about it, and basically went on a journey to get it. And it took me 17 or 18 years, every single day. First 10 years was basically healing myself in all different levels. trauma, you know, the damage is carried within the body in different levels, you know, whether it's in the physical, whether it's in the emotional, whether it's in your heart, whether it's in your soul, whether it's in your spirit, your energy centers within the body. We carry trauma in different ways, so that there's absolutely different levels as to how you heal that. And I was just getting up and basically going inside and sitting in silence and really learning through my own experience, you know, the stuff that was being revealed to me. And as well at the same time, the books, the teachers. Every single time I stepped in my van or stepped in a car, I'd be listening to somebody. I'd be basically like university in Wales, Zig Ziglar used to call it. So I'd just be listening all the time, educate myself, like repeating Wayne Dyer hundreds of times, you know, so it was verbatim. So I was learning the language, which is kind of a lot of stuff that I do now. When I talk about the words that I use, people have no idea what I'm talking about. That was the same for me. You know, I had to learn all these different terms, especially spiritual terms, you know, so that was my journey, brother. And then after 17, 18 years, you know, sitting in silence every single day with the intention to experience the divine, you know, and enlightenment just means that the direct experience and the realization of the divinity that's inside of you. That's all that it means. It's really quite simple. And after...
What would you kind of hang it, Jim, if you were like layman's terms, if I was to say to like the viewers watching, what would you define God? God to
me is a field of infinite possibilities and consciousness. That's the way that I see the divine. And again, every single thing that I'm talking about is through my own experience, Sean. You know, so I used to have this, when I was young, I'd be lying in bed as a kid, and I could feel this kind of presence coming in, almost like an electromagnetic, like a weight on me. It used to terrify me. It happened quite a lot when I was young.
That sounded like a night terror. Would it be similar like that?
Kind of like that, almost paralysed, but it didn't feel threatening. And it didn't feel like it was there was any malice or any darkness in it. It was just like this presence. And then after about probably 15, 16 years of this devotional journey meditation, this kind of feeling started to come back in again. And I was getting close to it. I could feel, because the stuff that I was reading in the books in terms of what God is, you know, the presence of the divine, the universal, you know, consciousness in terms of the field where everything's connected. I was getting close to that, but every time I try to get it, you know, and this would be going for years, it would basically, it's the ego. Because the minute the ego gets invoked, then you've got a position to defend, and then you would lose it. And then sitting one morning, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, it came in, this presence came in. And the way that because when I came back straight away, it's like, right, okay, what just happened? It lasted a couple of hours the first time. And what just happened? What did I just experience? And what it felt like when I came back from it, difficult to explain in words. So to intellectualize it, I've just about finished my first book, and I'm talking a lot about obviously this experience. This is a big part. What I went through and what I got during this it gives me, you know, the ability to talk about all the rest of the stuff that I teach. Again, it's from experience. And what it felt like when I went into it, the presence came in and Jim disappeared. So me, whoever I thought myself to be, and that's
the letters like your
name,
Jim,
your identity, your belief system, your programming, your job, your title, your fucking, you know, your legacy. A lot of the successful people like to think that's just the stuff that we do, you know. So at a certain level of consciousness, when you're in that space. For me that night, Jim disappeared. This presence came in, and it became me, and I became it. And it lasted a couple of hours. I never wanted to leave it. If I could get back to it, you would never see me. I would be in it. Because when I came back straight away, I was surveying windows at the time. I'd meet 30, 40 people a day every day. And I was like the hairdresser, and just start pouring your soap. That was me for South Lanarkshire Council, measuring replacement windows. So I'd go in, and every single day I'd end up coaching people. And for the first probably 17, 18 years, that's all I was doing. I was just helping people with mental health challenges, the stuff that I'd been working on with diet and basic awarenesses. But when I came back straight away, I was like, how can I give this to people? How can I basically share this with people? And there was so many lessons on it, you know, when I got it for the first time. Realising I couldn't explain it or express it in words. Like talk is cheap. I could talk about it all day, as I do when I talk about this stuff. But unless you actually get the experience of it, it's like you can't get wet for the word water. You know, so that's very much, you know, like I can't talk about this. Normal people, layman as I am, I grew up on a building site, you know, I'm just a guy. So for me, you know, how do you build a bridge? Which is what this is all about, building bridges from what I've experienced, you know, to where other people are. And straight away to my feelings, you know, it was like, what did it feel like? You know, because you can't make sense of it. The mind only goes so far, the intellect only goes so far. So what did it feel like? You know, the emotions, how did it express itself to me? And what it felt like was love. You know, it felt like love I'd never felt before. The way I love my wife and my Waynes and my dog and my mum, God rest her, and my dad, but in a different way, you know, just this boundless, endless, inexhaustible field that when you feel it, it feels like the same thing that we would call love. You know, when I came back straight away, things like God is love. You know, all these Bibles, they started, and I was just, I could just see through things, you know, like God is love, the kingdom of God is within you. I literally became that. I became the tree and the blade of grass and the pigeon. So you become everything. And that's why when I say like brother and sister, you know, and I'm not that just now. I'm a guy.
No, I know.
You come back to it, you know, it's like there's a great thing, like before enlightenment, like chopping wood and fetching water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and fetching water. It's actually harder, you know, when you get that and you come back. You know, Castaneda used to talk about the numbing effects of daily awareness, the circus and the zoo. Especially just now. Hard to sit through. I watched a wee bit of that last night, you know, just in passing and watching the closing ceremony and seeing where it is. So it's the journey itself and what I learned along that way and what I brought back with me. I do believe, you know, it's to help people, normal people, laymen, reconnect back to the bit that's inside every single one of us. You ask what's missing or what's wrong with the world. It's basically separation. So that presence that I discovered inside of me, one of the biggest things, Sean, that day, I would basically go, I was up to Rigside, which is Rignamna, call it, out the back of us. And you've been people's houses anywhere from Rutherglen all the way down to Moffat, down in the whole of South Lanarkshire. And you'd walk into some of these environments every single day and people would be blowing smoke on you, the houses would be stinking, God bless their souls. And up to that point, you'd be a wee bit judgy, even with 17 years of spiritual practices.
No, you can't help it, I know.
Of course, it's like an unconscious response. And at that point, I was sitting in meditation and I realised, like, because I'd experienced this, I'm just a guy. So the fact that I'd got it and the fact that it's in me, then it must be in everybody. You know, and again, one of the quotes that day was like, ignorance is our only sin. And I use ignorance a lot. And ignorance just means you don't know. It doesn't mean you're daft or you're stupid or you're thick. No. It just means you don't know.
It's a different, it's no used as in, it's no it's no like an insult. It's
you don't know.
It's like you're conditioned to be.
You've never experienced it.
I don't know if you've ever read. Did you ever read Inner Engineering? No. Sadhguru.
Oh, I know Sadhguru very well. Yeah.
Sadhguru talks about very similar. Right. When he was young, when he had his first awakening, it was very similar. He says he can't really explain it. He says in the book, he says you need to experience it.
Experience to understand. Absolutely.
And he just says he was sitting on a kind of hill, and he says he was obviously meditating and stuff. He says, and I just went, I don't know where I went. He says, but I just didn't want to come back. He says, when I came back, it was something very similar. And he says, I've only experienced that a couple of times. He says, I don't think it's something that you get to.
Me too.
But I think
it's a nightmare.
This is something that maybe you can help. I don't know about you, Jim, right? But see, like you talk about Jesus, and you talk about like the Buddha, you talk about the teachings seem to be very similar to the stuff that we're talking about. I don't believe in religion. I don't believe in like that kind of thingy. But
right on, bro.
I think
religion's got its place. There's a great Indian saint called Vivekananda who says it's great to be born into organised religion, but it's terrible to die in it.
Aye.
You know, it's like a kindergarten. It's like an introduction to it.
Aye.
You know, but they're a huge part of the problem. And the biggest challenge, Wayne Dyer taught me so much about religion, how they basically say, come to us and we'll get it for you.
Aye.
I remember the first time driving back through church when I was getting it every single morning myself, what they were trying to give me. And I used to get glimpses of that when I was a kid, and especially the Latin masses with the old priest, with the music going and then the sacred geometry of the church. It was incredible what you'd experience, you know. But I remember sitting back and going, I don't need to go to church anymore. I can get this. I'm getting more out of meditation in terms of my connection with that thing that we call God than you can ever get, you know, sitting and them trying to give it to you, you know. So again, it's come to us and you need to look at the teachings of Jesus, Krishna. Even though I don't look into much of that stuff, they said a lot of the similar things.
Definitely.
You know, and Jesus, I talk about the way a lot, you know, and it isn't my way, it's the way. You know, it's the way that it's meant to be, which is in alignment with the divine, it's in alignment with Mother Nature, with the elements, with the planet. It's balance, it's coherence. That's the way that it's always been.
And I think you need to realise that the collective consciousness and it's like I talk about it now, like the way you're like left wing, right wing, and nobody knows what they're storing and all that like I believe there's a collective consciousness that stokes that fire.
Of course it
so
does.
It's like the more people think about it, and listen, I get caught up in it. I can't help myself sometimes. I get caught up in it, and I watch Joe Rogan and I watch this one, but I get caught up in it, and I can get annoyed and go but that's very hard. That's just been conditioned. I think it's allowing ourselves maybe to be kind to ourselves and go, look, we have been conditioned through a curriculum, and we're going to get caught sometimes.
I think you need to see it first and foremost. I remember when I really woke up to the world and the horrors of the world and how everything that I perceived to be a certain way wasn't, you know, and you need to see how it is. You need to be like, even like that last night watching that closing ceremony, you look at it and you go, aye, okay, like, now you know who we're fighting against, now we know what the enemy is.
They don't hide it.
No, they don't, and it's all coming ahead, it kind of feels like. But for me, this is where the huge challenge, and you've seen me, you know, talking about it openly, the challenge of talking about the problem and how bad it is. We know how bad it is, you know, we know what the politicians are up to, we know how all goes together. You know, so when you talk about it, when you understand things at a certain level, when everybody's focused on the problem and how bad it is, you know, then you're talking about like a conscious collectiveness of people just focusing on what they don't want. And you start to see things like law of attraction, which is absolutely real.
Of course it's real, but it's not the way it's not. People think. I think people think. I've experienced the law of attraction. I've tried it. I mean, it was very short, but it's like I know that it works, and it's like, but it's no. I want £1 million tomorrow, and I'll get it. Do you know what I mean? I'll read The Secret, and like, do you know what I mean? It's like it's a very. I think it's more a collective thing when you need.
It's vibrational. The law of attraction vibrates. It's responding to what you are and what you feel, not what you want.
Aye.
You know, so when you're in the flow, when you're feeling good, when you're happy and joyful, life seems to go pretty good, doesn't it? That's the law of attraction.
Definitely.
Same as when you're digging that hole and you want to do yourself in, it seems it gets worse and worse and worse. You know, so the vibration, again, for me, when I was going through the whole Ibiza thing and in the hospitals, life was happening to me. I couldn't get a break. It was just getting worse and worse and worse. And then when I came out the other side of that, I believed for a really short period of time that God had a plan for me.
Aye.
So it was like life is going to happen for you. And then much later down the road, I realised, probably through Abraham Hicks, you mentioned the law of attraction, the secret, which isn't the source of the law of attraction. Abraham Hicks is, who I was fortunate enough to kind of meet and train with as well. And life comes from you, you know, so we look for the external results before we feel a certain way. You know, it's like the football players onto the park and they basically, you know, they wait to get the first couple of touches, or they fight in the cage, they wait until they get a wee bit of confidence. And that for me is too late. You know, it's like the fight before the fight is one of the things I teach. Like the best day ever starts the night before. Don't wait until you wake up to take it into your breakfast table or into your workplace, or so what you bring to it, you know, like who you're showing up as, which can be affected massively, you know.
And I think, see, when you look at some of the people who talk, like there is people out there like Denzel Washington and that are very, very clever and talk about the law of attraction, Conor McGregor and stuff like that, who done stuff like, and I think like as much as they're they've been doing a bad path, Conor McGregor, if you watch his first stuff and he's talking about the law of attraction when he was younger, he talks about, I'm going to knock that Jose Aldo at 1 punch. Now, everybody thought it was mad. Do you know what I mean? But this is the type of things when you're that confident and you're that, and you see that happening.
Well, it's certainty. It's coming from the end.
That's it.
Yeah, I think back to when I played football, I never ever doubted it was how many goals I was going to score. That's how cocky I was and confident. You know, I remember being asked by the Chelsea manager what position I played, and I'm a goal scorer. And I meant that, not just because that's what I did. It didn't matter where I played. You know, so there's that coming from the end. Muhammad Ali was the first one. He used to lie in his bed and predict when they were going. He called it his future programming. And if he ever get beat, he would just say they had a stronger designed future than myself. You know, so it's been about forever, this stuff.
And I think you look at like Tesla, you look at Da Vinci, you look at all these people, they all talk about the same things. It's like anybody who went out with and done amazing things and stuff is all just went to the source at some point, Jim. Do you know what I mean? My problem is I've been in a prison system where the awareness level's so low, right? And I'm like, how do we raise this vibration in an environment that's kind of made to keep you at a low vibration? Some of the housing schemes, unfortunately, are like that. And if you were to say to them, go down to the Vortex Centre, Jim, and Jim will have you breathing and you'll experience God, and then you'll jump in a whole hot water, and then they go, fuck off. Like that. But
I say that as well. I hear myself say that. I watch myself as jumping at the guy in the sides going, where's he going with this? It's mental.
But how it is the way, like, it is how you heal.
Well, the thing is, Sean, it's like, for me, it needs to be the experience. And that's what I do. That's with this work. You know, I'm not standing up here and going, let's go and look at what Wayne Dyer says, or let's go and listen to, you know, Sadhguru, or, you know, so it needs to be the experience. And really, you know, what I discovered along the way was for myself. When I really got it for myself, when I come back, I would class it as an enlightened experience, you know, and it's happened a few times since. You can't make it happen, but it's happened. So you don't need to get back to get it. You know, and when I came back from it, I realised that once you get it for yourself, it's like once you master yourself, you kind of need to pass it on. And for me, I changed so much when I come back from Ibiza. I had no desire for money. Even to this day, money means nothing to me, you know, in terms of, you know, the exchange and what you need to do, which is challenging when you've got a family and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, the ways of the world. But for me, service, helping people, that became my juice, you know, and for 23 years, I never charged a penny. Even the Vortex opened in 2016. For the first 3-4 years, it was always just trying to help people and basically sharing what I'd picked up that had helped me. You know, so it was very much the service. That's the juice that I got for it. And, you know, without the experience, you know, I could talk about this to it and it sounds amazing and it sounds really good, but unless you come in and you allow me to take me through the process, which is original to me, You know, it is. There's a lot of teachers, people that have came before me, and I've learned so many different things from so many different teachers. But the way that I put it together in terms of how it unfolds, I think the first 17, 18 years with the spiritual, for me, the spiritual practices, every single thing I do is leading back towards that, because in a time of separation, when we're struggling, it needs to be the reconnection. And that reconnection is a reconnection back to yourself. And at that point, which is a great question, who the fuck are you?
I know.
Who are you? People don't know.
It's like you say to somebody, who are you? And you say, like, Jim, like, that's just letters. Like, who are you? Like take it. And I think it was, the guy who wrote Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. I think it was him that connects that when I read his book. He was like, who are you? And he was like, that's just a set of letters. Like, you were given, and then you go, well, I'm Sean for Cumbernauld. Well, that's just a place. Like, you're not. So when you go deep, the only thing you can be is consciousness. It's not that can it go anywhere. It can't go any further back than
100%,
that.
100%.
But obviously, moving on to the kind of time so you went through, like, doing your own. I know you went on to start doing cold water and stuff like that, and your time spent with Mr. Wim Hof. How was that, Jim? Because I know that was an experience that was good and also had its bad sides. Do you know what I mean? So what was that like?
Fantastic, the whole thing, every single bit of it. You know, when the teacher shows up, you know, and it comes at certain times. I met Wim. I came across his name for the first time in 2016, and probably a couple of years before that, I was struggling in terms of I was bored. I'd had this incredible experience. I came back, I was going back to the numbing effects, just daily awareness, going about my life, and really bored and looking for something else. And in 2016, I did my first ever weekend event at the Vortex. A lady came in, did a weekend seminar. It was to do with angelic Reiki, which, again, I'm the most cynical human being in the world, Sean. You talk about angels and archangels. Unless I see it with my eyes, I ain't buying it. This lady came in. There was a man there that basically channeled archangels, and he channeled them, which sounds bananas, and he channeled for me, and he channeled for another 4 or 5 people. And later on that night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting down the Falls of the Clyde, and I'm basically, like, wondering, like, trying to make sense of it to begin with. And then the information that came through in terms of what happened over the next probably 6 months, I had 3 really bad injuries in martial arts. Tore my knee in half, fractured where my toe was going the ring where I thought I'd broke my neck, started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu very quickly. So I didn't take painkillers, was basically lying on the floor crying with pain, thought I was going to need a neck operation. And Wim Hof's name came through 3 times in 3 days. And straight away, you know, I just went up, grabbed about 40 kilos of ice, chucked him in the bath, watched him on YouTube, a couple of videos, jumped in the cold, and my pain was gone completely. That was December 2016. But more significantly, when I came out of the bath, I felt something very different. And because of my awareness, because of the time I put into myself and being inside myself, and how you feel is everything. When you go on this internal journey, it's always how you're feeling, your guidance system, your feelings and your emotions. So I was very aware of how I felt. And that time, the first time I stepped out of that ice bath, there was a calmness that came over me I'd never felt before. Even with all the spiritual practices and the meditation, and at that point I was hooked. You know, that was December 2016. I signed up for the Wim Hof Method fundamental course, slated just after that. I did the 10-week course, and then Wim was coming over to Edinburgh. That was kind of springtime 2017. Went up to see him, went up to meet him just to see who he was. And nobody was doing it then. There'd been a group in the December, just before I got into it, who had basically went through and qualified. The day that I saw him in Edinburgh was the night before I'd finished the 10-week course. Again, the timing of it was incredible. Went to meet the man, was there a couple of hours early, sat and spoke to him for a couple of hours before it. There's a great picture of me and him. I told him, well, he asked me, why are you here? What's your reasons? What's your why? What are you doing? And I told him my intention was to help him. I told him my own journey. He let me speak for about 20 minutes. We both cried. He gave me a hug. And at that point, it was right, okay, let's go and do this. And then I went to his house probably a couple of months later, did the advanced course, got a wee bit of a wake-up call there because went to his house to learn how to teach cold exposure, just because of what it was doing for me, and also the breath work as well, but it's mostly the cold. And sat for 2 days listening to science and autonomic nervous system and the stress response, and just had no idea. I was so far out my depth because I used to go to school to see my wife. You know, I had no formal education. So for me to go there and then to become an instructor, it's like 3rd year university biology they were teaching at the time. So really the whole, from springtime right through to November, when I went back to Poland to train with him for 6 days in the mountains up in Poland, I studied every day, learned it all, got it inside out, back to front, went over there. And then by that time, I'd met him at his house in the springtime. There was some things happened that I didn't like. I started to see through, I suppose, the veil a wee bit, see behind the scenes a wee bit. That's before he was massive, so you could actually see who he was. You were in his house, because I stayed at his house the first night there, which we didn't. We had our own space. And then I went to Poland. He was just back for America. And I'd watched him in America. in some of the things he was doing. And some of my friends, conspiracy theorists, were starting to question some of the stuff that he was doing.
I've heard some of the stuff.
Some of the stuff that he was doing.
Obviously, it's like you've experienced it firsthand, but I've heard some stuff.
Again, when you've got more awareness and you can see who people are, I watched the change in him when he came back from America. He'd been away with Rogan and Musk and all the gang, and he came back. And then when he came back over to Poland, 2-3 days into our training, he was straight in and he was propping the bar up every night and getting wrecked with the boys, and the way he spoke, how inappropriate he was, how vulgar he was. Some of the things that he spoke about. At the same time, he's talking about God and meditation and spirituality and healing the world and tribe and together as one, which I still believed in, but there was massive changes in him. And then when we came back, that was a bit of it wasn't the way they handled it. And again, they were just starting to expand.
And did that kind of hurt you, Jim, in a way, like, because obviously you've looked at this guy and
that didn't know, but further on it did. We get to that bit. I'm just warming up, and I'm going to be easy on him because I'm in a different place with him now in terms of the journey we've been on together. I was close to him. I used to do live videos when I come back for being an instructor. I would do live videos every morning at the Riverside, and one would come on live on Facebook. So we had a relationship, and I missed the kind of. I think if I'd been 6 months earlier, I'd probably got a seat at the table. I'd been part of the inner circle, but the ones that were there, I think I was a wee bit of a threat to them. Again, I didn't really need anybody. I had got it for myself at this point. I was there to help them. And also this tool, this technique, which was a wee bit of what I was doing. It wasn't all of what I was doing, but it was really significant.
So you were teaching Wim just as much as he was teaching you?
No, I wouldn't say that. No, Wim had it. He's at that place now where he's just got it for himself. No, I wouldn't say he learned anything from me. And it was certainly much the teacher-student. I was there to learn his processes with the intention to help him take it to the world. Really, simply because of what it does to you. But when you...
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
When you experience breathwork, any breathwork for the first time, and then cold exposure on the back of that, the reset that you get, when you bring in that amount of stress, especially when it's done properly, it can change your life. And I was in the cold 3-4 times a day at the beginning. But when I came back from Poland, the way they treated us, the way they were starting to treat the instructors was very much an us and them, it felt like. I was not part of that at all, very cliquey. And then starting to hear the stories about how they were treating people, how they taxed you in terms of everything you earned, having to pay £500 every year to basically recertify. And then also seeing holes in the stuff they were teaching as well. I was starting to question it when I come back very quickly. I was starting to question, the Wim Hof method in terms of what it was all about, what they were about, whether I wanted to stand beside them. At the time, I was very much on the spiritual kind of path and try to reconnect people back to the divine. I hate fight, I hate conflict, I don't do it. And it really came to a head 2018 it would be, where there was 3 suicides in Wisha. I was woken up one morning, meditation, somebody messaged me, and basically it was 3 suicides in Wisha. 3 laddies had basically suicided in this kind of suicide pact I heard at the time. And the charity Chrissy's House, who I'd never really, again, I don't watch anything, Sean, I don't follow anything online.
Chrissy's House is a great charity.
Great. Well, I've been basically chapped to her door on a Sunday morning, went in to ask for the lady that ran it, and basically, like, for whatever reason, I was there to help. And then very quickly, I get in, I explained who I was, I messaged women I got back for that day, and the plan was just to help any way that we could. I was doing like a breathing session in a gym just along for Chrissy's House every Friday night for free, just to help people. And
do you think when you do something for free, Jim, you don't get this? I've heard a lot of people say, and I agree with this. I think if you get away for nothing, it gets devalued or something.
They used to make exchange because people don't invest in themselves. I've given so much to so many people for free. A lot of taking it for free as well, which doesn't work either. They just assuming they take it. But there needs to be an exchange. There needs to be an involvement. You need to contribute, so you get it for yourself. Absolutely. So all that stuff I did for free, I had so many hard lessons in terms of it not working. And with Wim, I get back from Chrissy's House that day. I basically sent him a message. I've still got all the messages, and they basically said, like, what's going on? I'm coming over. Which was a real kind of turn in events, because since Poland, I hadn't really known much to do. I was kind of starting to do my own thing. And then here he was, like, let's go, let's fix it. And it was like, right, okay. And then for the Sunday I spoke to him, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right up to the funeral on the Friday, Wim Hof was coming. And for Chrissy's House, we're getting access to the schools, we're going to get in it and basically fix, these suicide problems. Because I know what happens when you switch off somebody's stress. I watched what happened to me in a place of hopelessness. I had an experience in Chrissy's House where people would come in and I'd basically take them through some breath work. Somebody who's tried to basically kill themselves that morning and is completely lost and, disassociated, can he tell the difference between reality and not? And then inside 20 minutes, half an hour, where you switch off the stress and you get them out of their head and reconnect them back into their heart and their feelings, miracles take place and they get home instead of getting sectioned and tied to a bed. You know, so I was watching this and they were seeing it as well. So on the Friday of the funeral, one didn't come, and they left me standing at the graveside, and Anne came across at the end of it and basically said to me, "You've got your people and I've got mine," and left me standing at the graveside. And that broke my heart. That literally broke my heart, because that whole time I was working with one of the families, the last lad that suicided.
And so you kind of set up a big thing like Wim Hof's coming over?
Wim was coming,
like
prepared, and I'd spoke to him like, this can't be the Wim Hof method. Sure, they'll tell you to fuck off. You can't come in with your breathe motherfucker t-shirt. This is serious stuff.
Aye.
And I was putting my name against him,
Aye.
you know, which was a huge lesson in terms of standing beside anybody. He never came. He sent me a text basically saying we'll raise money for the families. Left me standing. I get disowned with the whole thing with Chrissy's house. It felt like, and the gym at the end of the road. The whole thing seemed to turn. And at that point I realised I couldn't stand beside him. I couldn't really stand beside anybody. And then all the other stuff that he'd done, and the way that he behaved, and who he was perceiving himself to be, and then like who I saw him as being, so that the real him, I made a decision to get away from him.
I watched a thing no long ago, and there was actually people, it was like a few, as you was talking about, inappropriate, like with women and stuff like that. He's inappropriate with women and he's drinking every night and stuff like that. And I was very surprised when I watched it in the way that, because I when you watch him, he very much comes across like that. Like happy, and he's just very... It's
like, I call it a dancing bear. You know, you'd wheel him out and he would just become Wim Hof, the Wim Hof, and he's a powerful being.
Oh, you can see it changes people.
You're in his presence and he walks in, he's like, he's otherworldly, the presence and the power that's in him. Again, I believe his intentions were for the good. I believe they are for the good. The method itself, the amount of people that are doing cold exposure is fantastic. For me, probably after that whole experience, and then, you know, I'm always tuning in to see, it's always expansion for me. You know, so you take the Wim Hof method, I took the Wayne Dyer got me, I take for all the teachers, and you refine it and you make it better for yourself. So you'll use it every single day. And at the time, I used to question, where's all the women, where's all the children? Alpha males, tattoos, let's go and sit in your ice bath, like get the photographs for social media. But, you know, breathwork, when you understand like what it's all about, it's for everybody. And the benefits to it are incredible. And then when you start to really I started to see through the holes very quickly with Wim Hof in terms of the stuff that we're teaching you. One of the guys on the course was qualified PhD level, so all to do with chemistry and biochemistry, and he worked with athletes, and he was at the time questioning what they were saying to be fact, you know, so the science they were talking about. Also, every single time you spoke to them, there was a new record coming out or a new study that was going to heal the world. So you always had this bit you weren't quite getting to. And at the same time, you know, the amount of horror stories for the instructors and the people that were basically getting, you know, falling out with them or falling foul with them. There's too much stuff going on. But really for me, the breath work itself, when you understand the breath and what they're actually doing with it, Wim's an adrenaline junkie. You know, when you see the records that he's done, and that was the other thing, 26, 27 world records, that's all that we heard, all these world records. And now, you know, the amount of lies.
So do you think his ego started getting...
Well, the amount of lies that you tell, Sean, you know, I reckon there's probably a couple of world records. You know, I know, like, again, direct experience of the lies that he's told in terms of like who he says he is, you know, how he got to where he is, the internal struggles within the family, how the Wim Hof method came about, who owns the Wim Hof method, you know, their intentions with it. And then the most important part is like, what does it do to people? Now, before COVID, if you'd have met me in 2016, 17, I would have literally blew your brains out. I would have laid you down your back and just took you through like a complete reset, like recreate the DMT, power breathing, you know, like really going in deep. The intention, you know, with this work that I do is to get stuff up. We need to get it up and get it out, because what I know at the backside, in terms of how we heal stuff, when you learn a meditation and reconnect back into the divine and spirituality, that's how we heal it. But the first part is getting stuff up. So I love the method in terms of like, let's go in. If you're ready, applies to everything, PTSDs, the traumas from childhood, it needs to come up. So I loved it, but the power that was involved in it, the stress that was involved in it, since COVID, whether it's the virus or the vaccines, even before that, it felt like too much for me, just because of the stress you're putting in the body. And also, obviously, my experience with him, not just him, but the entire organisation, and then seeing where it is now, you know, and where it's came to. There's a journalist called Scott Carney, who's basically, he was one of Wim's inner circle. He was on the original Vice documentary, went to basically disprove him as a charlatan. And then he became Wim's best pal. He was one of the biggest spokesmen for the Wim Hof method, was a big player in taking it to the world. And now he's turned on Wim, and they've turned on him, and he's documenting about, there's a load of different deaths. There's a load of different lawsuits relating to people practicing the Wim Hof method. You know, so again, you go to the results, like how's it doing, how's it going? And for me, the stress that it basically brings into the body, especially since COVID, I think it's too much.
So do you think, like, I've done what you did, Jim, right? And I've like went through the process where I've brought people down, you know, that my cousin Carrie, everybody, like, and we all, you definitely walk out the Vortex Centre fresh as anything, and like a definite reset. You feel like a different person. Unfortunately, I can't keep it fucking up, but that's the whole other reason. But it's certainly that. So do you think some of the things that are going on now with the cold water, like firing people that are mega in fight or flight, because what you do is you get you out of that, you get you out of the fight or flight. Yeah. There's quite a long process before that. Yeah. Then we go in, you get the cold shower, you get ready for the cold water, and then you're there talking us through it. That's the best way I've ever experienced the cold water is your Vortex Centre. Yeah. So do you think jumping in there in a hyper vigilant, both like, I can stand there for 25 minutes is mad?
Aye.
I know.
Well, why are you using it? You're looking for a stress response. How quick does that happen? Inside probably 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Like, I've never timed it once. Probably 12,000 people I've had in the cold. Not a single thing has ever went wrong. You know, so there's a process to like how you deal with that. You're looking to deal with massive amounts of stress. You know, so how do you do that? Well, you need to prepare the body. You know, your reasons. What's your reasons? What's your why? Why are you doing it? If you don't have a reason for getting into the cold, you're not going to do it. I've been in almost every single day since 2016. I need to. Number one, for physical pain, switches off all my pain, takes away all the inflammation. I've had a sore back since I was probably since the vaccine damage. I've been sore my whole life. And then the mental health stuff as well. You know, the release that it gives you when you bring in this amount of stress. So the cold is like it's a practice. It's like a spiritual experience for me. So to go into that and jumping up and down and doing the massive power breathing, like literally out your nut, and then jumping into it for anything longer than a couple of minutes. One of the Wim Hof Method instructors, who was one of my students, he came in and they were doing an advanced, I can't remember what they called it, but he was an ex-army guy. This is a couple of summers ago, and he came up, and I think it was 20 minutes in an ice bath. And this guy had been in the cold every single day, and he asked me to put him through it. He was becoming a Wim Hof Method instructor. And at the time, as I was watching it, I'm thinking, what's the point of this? Put him into it. Some was splitting the trees. Took about an hour and a half to get back to normal again. The shaking, hypothermia. And I'm just watching, I'm going, what is the point of that? And what is the benefit to that? You know, there's a lot of groups that's how they do it. I know. It replaces addiction for a lot of people. It's great for, you know, in terms of the community, people getting on about it. There are groups, as always with me, is what's your reasons, what's your why, what's your intention with it, what are you getting out of it. It's to calm the nervous system, you know, it's to give yourself a break. You sit in an ice bath, and if you sit in there for a couple of minutes and you breathe properly with intention, and you learn how to switch off your head, and you learn how to reconnect back inside your heart, back inside your soul.
Oh, it's amazing.
You know, that's the reconnection process. So how you get into that cold, you know, it should be easy. It shouldn't be hard. You know, if you need to man up and do 45 minutes of breath work and do 4 rounds of Wim Hof Method to go and sit in an ice bath, who's got the time for that? No, you know, so for me, everything needs to be simple. So I teach one breath. It's literally one breath to get into the cold. Now, how you breathe when you get into it, that's when it begins. You know, that's the important part. And then really you're trying to deal with this massive amount of stress. You're looking to calm that in terms of bring it in, welcome it in, give the body the gift that it needs, and then be with it so you're back into rest and digest, parasympathetic, you know, to bring the body back into coherence. You know, so...
Because they just kind of feel... like it's like you're stressed out, and then it just melts.
Well, it's like anything, Sean, when you stop fighting against it. You know, it's when you welcome it in and you understand how it goes together, and when you get through the cold with me, you've done probably an hour and a half of breath work. You've experienced like profound meditation. You reconnect. You can't think. You know, so you're in your heart and you're in your soul. You're in a state of bliss. So at that point, the ice bath's easy. You know, and for me, it's like, right, okay, how do you walk away? How do you leave the vortex or anything that I do and have that? You have a practice. You'll know how to get back to it. The challenge has always been like, how do people get that experience without me taking them through it? And that's something we've been working on since January. There's now an entire system there in a program that supports people with the guided breath work and the meditations and the videos so they can go back and get it for themselves. Absolutely.
No, obviously we're going to go in and speak to you about the Vortex Centre and stuff like that, Jim. So, I mean, one last kind of question just to kind of touch on, like, see if you believe that there's a positive light and there's a light. Is there dark forces, do you think, Jim? Do you believe in dark entity?
I think there's some going on, I think there's an opposite side to it, I do believe. I think the source, you know, everyone comes for the divine, everyone comes for the source. But to look at the world in the way that it is, you know, there are whatever they are, beings, entities, human beings of their intentions are not the way that it's meant to be.
I know.
And if you look back, it depends how far back you go, but when civilization gets to a certain point, when we start to mess about with nature, I remember back they started cloning the sheep way back in the day when I was at school. Dolly the sheep, and they start to mess about with DNA.
I think how long ago that was, and think about what they've done behind the scenes.
You look at now, you see the confusion and things like male and female. That's all there is, until you start to fuck about with it and start to mess about it with whatever it is they're doing with the medications and the foods and the environment. So now, some of these children that are coming up, they are compromised.
So confused.
And it's so confused.
It's so confusing.
So it's at a point where it probably isn't just male and female, that there's it's kind of grey area. And that's done through man, that's done, some would say, by like wrong intentions. So what's the reasons for doing that? The same as what's the reasons for looking at the world, and seeing why so many people are sick, so many people are in disease, so many people are struggling with so few answers or solutions. Why is that? So at that point you go, there could well be something that's keeping us down, that's keeping us suppressed. For how long do you want to go back? Because it's always been that way.
Well, you look at Aristotle and stuff like that, and they talk about it like how basically like Plato died because for it. Plato died, I'm sure it was Plato or Aristotle. One of them actually died because he was trying to talk about awakening and trying to spiritually awake people back then.
They don't want it.
No, they don't.
Because the answers, and it's in all of us.
Definitely.
That's why I try to keep under the radar a wee bit, because this stuff, what I see every single day, I see miracles, Sean.
I know.
Even just switching somebody's stress off, like giving somebody a break for their constant chat, like no sleeping, getting out of their head so you can't think, like peace of mind. As a starter for 10, that can be like a miracle. But then if you use intention, as I do, with the intention of breath and go back inside, once you get into this, once you switch this off out of the questions, then you reconnect back into your heart, back into your soul. It's a whole other world.
I know. No, it's definitely, and I think I'm just obviously looking at because obviously what I believe in, it's just my belief system, there's positive energy, there's negative energy, and I think you can kind of work with both. And I think if you look at maybe we look at Machiavelli's work and stuff like that, and the kind of dark side of psychology and how to use that seems to be very much at play there now. Do you know what I mean? Like how to do it, that kind.
In terms of answers and try to find solutions and healing, in my experience, looking back and wondering what happened to you in childhood and wondering the stuff that went wrong. Again, when you understand basic law of attraction, when you shine a light in it, law of attraction, when you shine a light in anything, it gets bigger. So when you go back in and you focus, and you can spend your entire life, wondering why your parents were the way they were, or why whatever happened to you, or it makes it bigger and it keeps it going. And at some point, and for me, I think I was lucky. A lot of my students ask me, like, how do you do this every single day? And I think back to being chained to a bed, in a mental hospital where I had to basically pee myself, which was just horrible in so many different ways, lying in that, like the heat and suppressive. And I think back to that and I go, I'll never be back chained to a bed ever again.
No.
So the fuel for my fire, the pain and the suffering, that's why I work a lot with addiction. I love when somebody comes in and they're lying on their mom's couch and they'll get fuck all. They've lost everything, because at that point, this work, it takes work. And people don't like to do the work.
No.
That's where the pills and the easy answer, and I never ever give any of my students, anybody worth the answers. They need to work out for themselves. So we're teaching awareness to see what you're doing to yourself. You teach the power of intention, how you make it better. And then, once you understand, the internal practices, like being, like how you're meant to feel, being in the flow, alignment, Abraham would call it, to be in alignment with how you're meant to feel, to be in that flow state of the divine. That's how we fix it. That's how things get better. And there is a way. There absolutely is. I see it almost every single day, Sean, and it's in everybody. So it's universal. The amount of some of the corporate stuff I've done, and normally at the end, the Asians, or the Indians, and they're coming in and they're all like, they get it, they understand it, they understand the God chat. Whereas in this country, I can see. I remember my dad at the time when I was online. And I was basically putting the poems out as a way to like drop breadcrumbs, for people to go, what the fuck's he talking about? What does consciousness mean? What's he talking about? And then that's what I had to do. So I remember my dad at the time, like, what the fuck are you doing? So they don't understand it, So it's, I think the education process and explaining what it is that I'm doing, normally I find people when it's at a point where it's so bad that there isn't, like, they've tried everything, so they've tried all the stuff, they've did the therapies and they've done all the different whatever it is, and they get to a point and then for whatever reason, and it happens very quickly.
I think, see, like, obviously when you step out of the awareness and you see a wee bit, I mean, obviously I'm not claiming to be anywhere near with your Jim, but I know that I've got a wee bit of awareness, and I think that I'm still stuck in a lot of stuff. I know that I'm still stuck with a lot. I'm not, like, I don't claim to be like that. I definitely know where I want to be in life, and I hopefully will get there at some point. I've got a lot of stuff to work through myself, but I think when you look at the way like we talk about the education system and stuff like that, how you're educated as a kid. I remember David Rockefeller saying like we need to take control of the education system. That's how we'll keep the people down. We'll keep them. So this was a way back, like when they were about the oil and stuff. But it seems to be that the way that the education system going now, as you were talking about, like you don't believe in a boy. No, I don't care what you are, and you can go and be whoever you are, and I honestly enjoy yourself. But don't tell me biologically like that's not a boy, and that, do you know? And these people talk about get the people to believe the unbelievable, and then you've won. Aye. And this is what scares me, Jim, is you can actually argue with somebody now that will tell you like he's not a boy, and you're like, hey, what do you mean? Like, it's
you're getting old, son.
I know, but that, do you know? Sometimes I go, am I? Is this the way? But it's no. I know it isn't.
But there's truth and falsehood. There's black and white. There's no grey in the middle. It's certain things. It's a certain level that only is the truth. That's why the truth sets us free.
Aye.
And for me, all of that, every single bit of it, the answer is the reconnection. It's the direct experience of who you really are, and not just who you are, but what you are.
Aye.
We carry the divine inside of us. It doesn't matter what you come in with. It doesn't matter your belief system.
I know.
I've worked with some laddies you couldn't mark with a sword.
Aye.
And I can feel like like cynical when they come in and talking about God, and the minute you lie them down, the minute you switch off the stress, the minute you take them on that like functional breathing, so de-escalating the nervous system in a different way, you switch off the head and then you reconnect them back into themselves, possibly for the first time in life, then you start to remember.
I know.
I always say there's nothing to learn with this stuff. It's all about remembering. It's inside of you.
I know.
For the school system, right? I remember like hating school. Like penalty kicking my primary school teacher going in. I remember hating high school. Used to go to see my missus. I remember even the work environment. So every single bit of it, it's against what the nature's meant to be, what our nature as human beings is supposed to be. Sitting in boxes, sitting at a table, not speaking to your neighbour, like sitting concentrating on stuff that actually has no value.
I know.
Unless you're
learning
going to
about history that's absolutely, you're never going to use it.
It's made up. I know. You don't know. You don't know his story. You don't know what it is. So it's like,
I know.
And then you look at the people that are invested in that system that now get into university with degrees, and it's like, right, okay, what are you going to do now?
I know.
There's no value in the world. There's no,
Elon Musk. I mean, I'm not saying he's a great guy or anything, but Elon Musk did say, and it was a point where I remember him saying like 99.9 of PhDs don't even get looked at again. Like, see, after they're done, and you're like,
so don't do it.
I'm like, surely that can't be right, and it is. It's like they don't come up for the surface. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's mad. And the amount of people and money that's in education. And it's all about how do we fix it through education. And to me, it's just causing more division. And anybody that experiences reconnection knows that's the way. You can't. It's a healing, but it's trying to get. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if I walked into my local pub, I just know what my pals would be like. If I was like, do you know that guy's right? We're all going to like, they'd be like, fuck off.
The thing is, for us, I see it every time. The amount of people that come to me, and it's like, I need to bring them back. I need to bring either their partner or their pals, and I'm like, don't do that. It doesn't work. You need to get this for yourself. Don't tell anybody about it. Like, especially the God chat.
That's what I do. I'm doing. I brought Fiona. I didn't carry.
You're big man. You're done. But it's like, that kind of stuff, it should be private. When I was learning meditation, I would say to one of the guys I was training with at the time, like, this is what happened last night, this is what I experienced last night, maybe 10 years in, and I would lose that feeling for 6 months. And I got to learn, the minute you, like, the ego, you're defending a position and they're watching, and seeing how you're doing, it's the ego, the divine is above all that, so it's none of that stuff, is to get it for yourself. So I wouldn't say get it at the pub, they're never going to hear it. It's like some of these cold water groups that I see online, they're not my people, because cold water is probably 5% of what I teach. It's an entire system of intentional living that's only for certain people, probably of a certain level of like consciousness or where they're in their journey. They're going to get in and actually apply and do the work every single day. That takes reasons, that takes why, and that's not for everybody.
No, definitely. I would love to, like, I've experienced the Vortex Centre, Jim, and you get away, you get given a full manual and everything to go away and learn how to do it every day. And I'm sorry to say, like, that you just don't, I don't get the time. It's like, I've got a 2-year-old, my missus is pregnant, I've got this, I've got work. It's like, and there's no excuses. You could get up a couple of hours earlier.
What's your reasons, Sean? It's your reasons. What's your reasons? What's your why? I remember me and my wife started the Wim Hof Method original program, and she got 8 weeks in, middle of January time. It was like probably February. It was 4 foot deep in snow. One of the last bad winters we had, 2016, that would have been 17. And she stopped to start her yoga training. And at the time, she said the Wim Hof method's too hard in winter time. And I watch her cold practice every year. It stops at kind of the start of winter time.
That was the last one I'd done with you. But see, it's amazing. It still works, but...
Well, that's when it's best. You know, again, the cold doesn't change the temperature of the cold. It's the external environment, you know. So again, how's that affecting you? Right. At the time, she said that it was too hard. And at the time, I was working with somebody that wasn't well and they were into it like a fiend like me. And I agreed with her. I said, it really is too hard unless you're really not well. So if you've got like a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, or you're dealing with chronic inflammation where the choice is to eat the pills that ruin your stomach or to sit in an ice bath for 2 minutes, then that becomes a choice. If you've got reasons for doing it, then you know you've got a chance of doing it. If you don't have reasons, you just come for the experience, it never normally works.
I know.
You know, that's why the people I work with are normally like really not well. You know, or sometimes they're on the bounce the other side of it, you know, and they're flying and they want to add these tools and things to get to that place that they're trying to get to. So
do you think like obviously there's no doubt there's a spiritual movement, Jim, right? In Scotland and in the world, for like there's a lot of people out there, and like I listen to like Sadhguru, and I listen to other people. I love reading like Eckhart Tolle and even like I like Joe Dispenza. Do you know what I mean? I like Joe Dispenza. I like the stuff. There's a lot of people out there that I do like listening to, and I get a lot out of. Gabor Mate, I love listening to Gabor Mate, but it's still, for some reason, there's still no, like, there's still a resistance, and do you know what I mean? Like, if you're in the way that there's not enough people buying into it yet, do you know what I mean? It's like,
I think that's because of so few of them give the experience. You listen to Sadhguru and you hear him talking about it and his philosophy and his take on the spiritual, you know, how it goes together and what the divine's doing. It's fantastic. The way that it must come through the divine, when he talks like that, it must come through the divine. Joe Dispenza, he gives the experience, so he's bringing people in, hooking them up and inside, whether it's a couple of days or a week, like reconnecting them back to themselves, and miracles are taking place. But I think a lot of people, you know, they talk about it from their own experience in terms of what they've got, but they don't give the experience. So then people are listening to it going, okay, it sounds great, but what about me? You know, and I think you need to give the experience, at least so somebody can go away and have an idea of a feeling of what meditation is. Meditation for people, they believe is to quiet the mind. You know, they believe it's to switch off, to get a break for yourself. And that isn't it. You know, that would be relaxation or contemplation. Whereas meditation, the purpose of meditation is direct experience of God. I know. That's what it is. You know, yoga means union, means yoke with God. That's why you do it. So anything other than that, and that shouldn't be, in my experience, a quiet process. No. When you sit in this energy field that literally creates worlds, you know, the inspiration that comes through you, you know, the ideas, the possibilities, that's a really active process. You know, so you need to learn how to, through experience, how to tune into that. And when you tune into it, why is that important? Well, you take on the power of it. When you tap back into the divine, you know, that's where we came from, I do believe. We carry it inside of us, and once we die, and again, through my own experience, my mum passed on, my hand was in her heart, and I could feel when her spirit left her body. And the second that happened, I could feel where she was, but her body became like an empty suitcase. You know, so death becomes an illusion at that point.
Do you believe in reincarnation, Jim?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I think I believe in it, right? But I don't, obviously, like, I would be, I know what you mean, but I don't think your soul dies. I think you can go into another. That's only my take, but I would be interested to see what you thought about it. Like,
I feel like, I kind of feel just now, like once you really get it and you see through the veil and you experience it, I can't wait to die now. Not that I'm looking for this to accelerate this life, but there's nothing to be afraid of. That feeling that I got, being in that field where everything is, I mean, you're talking about divine perfection, so nothing goes wrong. There's no duality. There's no darkness. There's only the solution. It's the light. You're basically becoming the light. You know, so at that point, there's nothing to be afraid of. Now, depending on, and again, I go by my own experience, don't listen to too much, but could you come back if you've got the choice to come back and do some work? You know, do you get to a certain point and you maybe get to go to the next level? I don't know, Sean. I really don't know. It's something I don't spend a lot of time on.
Do you think we're not supposed to know?
I don't know.
I know.
I really don't know. It's like, I very much deal on the stuff that I know, the stuff that I've experienced. That's the only thing I'm kind of qualified to talk about, what I've been through, and then how I can apply that to this time we're in, primarily to help people, you know, and myself as well, to get it for myself and then pass it on.
So do you think people need to be aware of kind of like charlatans and stuff out there? Like people who... It's
difficult. I've watched it for the beginning, especially with the cold water and the breathwork stuff. Again, it's the intention of the teacher. What's their reasons, what's their why, you know, and how qualified are they? The big thing for me with breathwork is when you lie somebody flat on their back and you take them inside, now the unconscious mind stores every single thing that's ever happened, which is a blessing and a curse. When you go inside and you start to, like, especially breathwork, you start to bring up these feelings and these memories and these, the stuff that's happened. Then you need to have the ability to get people out the other side of it.
Right.
And I hear absolute horror stories, people just being left. That was one of my challenges with Wim Hof when we did the training. We were doing a couple of hours every morning, 5 a.m, in this dungeon under the hotel. The drums, it was insanity. It was like a rave. And then people were breaking, like childhood trauma, stuff going on. I spent the entire 6 days there at night time, basically working with people and helping people and doing energy work and sitting in meditation with them and trying to put themselves back together so they could go again the next day. So that's where, when you see people, again, it's the intention. What's their intention? And that's where I fell out with a lot of people in this game. I basically cut them off. I take them out of my life. I block them in every front. I don't want to play. I'm not interested in them being right or me being right. I've got a very specific way that I do things. I believe that I work for the divine. I believe I'm here to help people but reconnect, that reconnection process. So anything other than that, I don't spend a lot of time. What I do know is there's a lot of people doing it for the wrong reasons, which is primarily money. They're trying to get it for themselves. And especially since COVID, they don't know that, Sean. People don't know. They're in ignorance. They think, that they're trying to do it for the greatest good. I could tell you a dozen stories for people in Scotland that come for one session in the Vortex, and they normally break and they reconnect back to themselves. Then they leave, and they'll within days they can have, like, my programs, the names of my programs. They've opened up, different practices, just basically stealing it. So the way that I make peace with that is very simple. There's so many people benefiting from what I'm basically passing on to them. And now the amount of people that have been about the different cold water groups over the last couple of years, what I find is, the leader of that group and their level of consciousness, people start to see through them very quickly. And then at some point they'll come, right, what is there? What's next? And then at that point, I'm finding people are coming back, because once cold water, if you're not doing cold water every single day and breath work every single day and being aware of your diet and being aware of how you sleep and the difficulties, the dangers of Wi-Fi, that's a starter for 10. So these are stuff that you should be doing every single day. But the real stuff, the real work, for me, it's a meditation. It's a getting up and sitting in silence. It's the discovery of the self. It's the healing that comes through that. It's that entire intentional way of living. So I'm finding more and more people that are looking for, more than just going and learn how to sit in the cold, but it's where you take it after that.
No, and I think obviously the Vortex is moving in the right direction, Jim. It's moving where you want it to go. Do you know what I mean? It's unfortunate. I would love to come down more. Do you know what I mean? And I've got my own people like that I speak to about spiritual stuff, and I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And I know that I've got a lot of stuff going on that I need to work through, but I can't speak highly enough of the Vortex Centre. I can't speak that highly enough of the work that you get, and that I would say to anybody to go down and experience it.
It's only goodness, Sean. Everything is better. It doesn't matter what it is. That when you take away stress and you switch off the mind and you reconnect people back into their heart and their soul, and then the way that I do it is to help us remember how we're meant to feel. Human beings are supposed to be happy.
No, you come away from the Vortex Centre feeling like
the way you're meant to feel.
You do.
And then the choice.
You feel like that every day, and then your choice is. But I mean, that's why is it so disappointing myself that I don't. That way it's like you go back and then the next thing you're up for work and you're like, oh, like
your reasons and your why. What's the point in doing it? What's the point in feeling that way every single day? What's the point of being in the flow and being happy and being joyful and feeling love and being compassionate and being present and sleeping well? What's the point of that? Well,
and then somebody comes in and presses your ego, right, or does something and it's like very quickly you can revert. Well,
in the beginning,
that's just the human side.
In the beginning, but eventually through training and the more your vibration, these are like your teachers. So the Buddha says when somebody offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does the gift belong? So the gifts come on, but you deflect them. It's like jiu-jitsu. You don't fight it force on force.
No,
you basically
definitely.
Deflect them.
I done some work with somebody. I go and see it and it was about hatred and stuff like that, and I certainly the individual, I certainly don't feel that same level of hatred. I think there's levels that think that there's definitely stuff out there that people need to go and experience, and the Vortex is one of these things. I think that definitely people need to go and experience.
We don't know how we're able to feel. That's the thing. When you say to somebody like to feel unconditional love, like to feel real, authentic love, a lot of people never felt that in their life before.
No.
They don't know what it feels like to give it. The people you're talking about with the prisons and the environment, all that kind of stuff. A lot of these, me as well, but I see people never felt love before.
I know. Nothing, Jim. Like when you're trying. No,
absolutely. So where do you go with that? Because then it becomes all in the head. Then you're in the intellect. Then you're in your mind, which is a different language, a different system.
I would have like a Jim McFadyen or like that kind of Vortex Centre thing in every prison. I would have, but again, the thing is the level of awareness when you're so full of drugs and you're so full of hate and you're so full of, you need to get rid of that first, and you need also be a system where you've got maybe the staff and that who are conditioned to hate as well. They're just the vibration level is very low.
Very difficult.
So it's very difficult to get anybody who's, and then you've got to go back to that. Do you know what I mean? So it's an extremely hard process. It's something that I would love to see, but how would it? As you say, you need to keep this work up, and I don't know how you would do that in places like that. Do you know what I mean? And that's what saddens me, because I've always, a prison reform, I always try and whisk it and go, how would that work? And I think
the challenge in prisons, you know, it's like to switch off the stress, you know, to give you something to manage your mental health, to give you something to look forward to, you know, to what practices can you do? So breath work is absolutely a practice. You know, you think of the overwhelming and the getting into that state, I can imagine that you would get into in there. How do you deal with that? How do you switch off without reaching for drugs or whatever it is? So breath work would be the key to doing that. And then the benefits of cold exposure, you know, what that'll do for you. You know, you think, you know, what in that environment again, the chronic stress that people are under, you know, and to switch that off, I would have cold showers in every yard. I'd have a cold barrel outside in every yard.
I heard shots have got they've got just brought them in recently, which I was really surprised, and I'm glad. Do you know what I mean? But I heard shots have got it, but I don't think it's that like massively well attended. But I think there is guys getting some stuff out of it. But like obviously, see like because sometimes these podcasts, considering what ones are, like, sometimes it's shown in the prison, Jim. What would you say, see like a prisoner who's maybe really struggling, under a lot of stress, maybe get enemies and stuff like that run about and really a fight or flight mode and stuff? What would you kind of, what would you be?
There's a lot in it, Sean, and it's so difficult. You know, obviously
it's a hard question I've asked you.
It's a really difficult question, but again, the answer and the solution is the same for me all the time. It's a reconnection process back to the self. So if you gave me him for a couple of hours away from that environment, you know, where he gets a chance to be himself, you know, and he doesn't need to have his guard up. You take him through some breath work and teach him how to de-escalate his nervous system, teach him how to sleep and switch his mind off, teach him how to meditate and what meditation is. For by anything else, he can then go back into the jail and nobody knows anything about it.
I know.
Who can see that you're breathing? Who can see that you're managing your nervous system? Who can see you're switching off your stress?
Some of the Tibetan monks who go to jail with China, they're like, you can't jail me.
It's temporary.
Like
they're inside. They're in the field. You know, but it's our belief system and everything that means. You know, in terms of what you're losing, and you know, so breathwork would be the key. And then where you go in that internal journey again through education process. One experience would be enough. You know, and then if you could add in a cold exposure practice so that it became as like normalised as going to the gym, you know, as a way to get rid of your stress, so that it became something that everybody's doing. You need to normalise it, and that's difficult, really, really difficult.
I suppose, and it's as you're working with a system that's very rigid and stuff like that. And listen, it is what it is. It's you're not going to. There's slow changes happening, and there's a lot of good people in the prison now working, and there's a lot of people trying. Do you know what I mean? This is it, and listen, hopefully we get there one day. But anyway, so. Moving on to like the Vortex Centre, Jim. How did the Vortex Centre come about? How did it start? How did it
really? They decided to help people. I was sitting with the building I'm in just now. I've owned that building for 25 years. Live upstairs, and the Vortex was downstairs. And I built a house in the garden. And at the time, they were lying empty, water passing on them, and not really knowing what I was going to do. And it was after the angelic Reiki weekend, sitting in the trees, where basically, honestly, you couldn't. I hear myself saying that, but
Gabriel come to you.
Information came through as to the Vortex and what I was going to do with it, and then you know, nature, rivers, trees. That very night changed my life. You know, really, I had a really profound experience out in the woods, middle of the night, and I came back, met Wim Hof just after that, and then at that point, you know, I knew what I wanted to do, which was basically to help people in a different way. I was still working full time at the time. Opened it up, didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but the breathwork and the cold exposure was like the final piece for me. That was like one of the kind of final bits in the puzzle, mostly because it switches off the head and it switches off the nervous system. Then because everything I'd learned up to that point in terms of getting back inside in the spiritual bit of it, you can't do that if the mind's active. That's why mindfulness most of the time doesn't really work, because unless you know how to calm the mind, which is done by the breath. One of my teachers, Patrick McKeown from the Oxygen Advantage, he talks about the bridge back inside. You know, one of the first breathwork exercises you learn from him, how to change the chemistry to get it back into balance and into coherence. It stops your mind and it takes you back on the inside. And once you're back on the inside, then the journey begins. You know, back into your feelings, back into your heart, back into the moment, which is the only thing that we've got. And at that point, everything changes.
So do you think what's obviously going on in the Vortex Centre now, Jim? Because obviously I've got you like on your socials and stuff, and there's a lot moving. There's a lot of stuff moving here. So so what's kind of happening?
Loads of good stuff going on now. Massive expansion this year. Did a talk last year at the Financial Freedom Summit. I kind of questioned why I was there, and I believe I went to pick up. It sounds terrible, but a young couple basically. They're now working for me more or less full time. They came back. They were in a terrible place. Did an hour chat at the summit and basically took them through some guided breath work, some meditation. And since then, I can't get rid of them. They started appearing at the river sessions on a Wednesday night. And then their skill set, both of them, a young couple, from inception right through to the market, Fern and then Michael, who his skill set and how he's got that in terms of the online stuff, you couldn't make it up. It's a direct manifestation. So since January, they've been basically like full time. The plan is to take it to the world and help as many people as we can. I've now got another 4 people who are involved in it, between creating the reels. We've got somebody who's going to be doing the corporate stuff on the road, because it needs to be funded. My desire to take it to the world takes money, which has always been a challenge for me. Funny to think how much money I grew up with, and then the challenge I've had since 1996 with it is fascinating. But we need money, so the plan is to take it from the corporate, to people that have got it, and then give it to people that they can't afford it or can't get around about it. It needs to be made normalised. It needs to be a thing where you're talking about breath work, relaxation, cold exposure, meditation, that sort of stuff that's free. I know. When you learn how it goes together, and it's stuff that everybody should learn. Every single kid, the minute they walk into primary 1 or 2, should learn that stress is a choice, that anxiety is a choice, depression is a choice. When you understand how your nervous system works, when you start to make different choices about what you eat and where you're spending your time, what you're thinking about. So the information is there. The whole process, the program that I use is all of that, but it's the education process. It's then getting people in about it so they can learn it, and that takes a wee bit of time. And then, unless you've got enough reasons, a big enough why, you won't bring it into your life. But for those that do, I see people absolutely flying just now, Sean. And they're in the exact same environment as people that are really struggling for all walks of life. Just because the way they go to bed, how they prepare for sleep, how they sleep is very important. If you're not sleeping properly, there's a way to do that. But when you wake up in the morning time, the minute your feet hit the ground, because every single thing that you want, no matter what it is you want, whether it's a new holiday or a new watch or a new motor or whatever it is, for a long time I've known it's because of how you think it's going to make you feel. That's what it's the feelings that you're chasing.
Definitely.
So we look to the external world and we try to basically fuel the feelings with the stuff that we buy. So we spend our whole life chasing stuff that doesn't fucking matter.
Validation into it.
We buy it, it comes in and it's onto something else, especially with social media. What's next, what's bigger, what's greater. So a long time ago, I decided I wasn't going to do that. I decided I was going to feel what it felt like to be in that place where everything worked out. So instead of having to go and get the things, every single day I go to that place in meditation, I'll feel what it feels like to be there already. So that to me is like being in the flow. And again, when you feel as good as that, the way that you can with these practices, these tools and techniques, the stuff seems to show up.
No, I think obviously when I started this podcast, I was like, I want it to be a positive message. I want positive people. I want all different opinions, and I want all different conversations going on. But I want people to start looking at positive stuff. Because I think there's a lot of negative stuff out there, especially some of the podcasts that are out there now. And listen, it is what it is. These guys do their thing. But I don't want to do that. I want each podcast to have some sort of positive message at the end. Doesn't matter what it's about. But the sad thing is it doesn't sell, Jim. It's like you need to sometimes you need to try and disguise the message within the kind of the madness. Do you know what I mean? And it's hard to balance, and I've found that hard with keeping it up. And obviously when you're working full time, you're doing stuff. It's impossible. It's like such a hard. It's grind, and you've not got the big sponsors coming in because they're interested in the ones that are talking rubbish. Do you know what I mean? And like, but I know you've got your own podcast as well, don't you? The Godcast.
The Godcast.
I've watched a few of the episodes. It's pretty good.
You're the one.
But it'll get there. It just takes time.
It's already there.
Consistency. It's consistency.
I love it, Sean. I like it's interesting for me, and the reason I'm sitting here is because of you. I've been offered a lot of these over the years. I've never done them, but when I met you at the Vortex and you came out and your intention to do this, then to see somebody actually going and doing that. And then your intention to make the world a better place, it's like the problem and solution are two different places. I'm all about the solution. Now, unfortunately, because of the way it's set up, I get disappointed when I see them coming in and it's all about the crime and the glorification. And that's the circus, that's the zoo. It's a jungle.
I know.
And it makes it worse. And they don't know what they're doing. But unfortunately, that's what basically switches people on. Again, that stress response and being excited where, You know, how's that going? How is that way of doing things? It's not
working.
There's
a fascination with crime, right?
Right.
But I tried to, because I've done a podcast with Chris McFadyen. It was about prison psychology, and I was like, every single thing you watch, right? It's about the police, or it's about like it's all about like crime, and don't get me wrong, listen, some of them are great, like Gomorrah, Sopranos, and all this. They're brilliant box sets.
But the stuff that's real, that's not great.
Aye, do you know what I mean? But then you go
right.
to watch like some podcasts, and guys are talking about
Traffic.
like bad things, you know, and they're glamorising it a wee bit, and I'm like, I don't think that's good.
That's just a lack of awareness. That's just ignorance again. You know, they're basically without knowing that they're selling their soul. And I just don't spend any time. I don't watch anything that makes me feel bad. I want to feel good at all times. I want to be in the flow of well-being at all times. I tried the other way; it doesn't work. You know, so that's where awareness comes in. I don't watch anybody. I don't see anything, Sean. You know, I spend my time only in the good stuff. I am always about the light. I'm always about like, what's the upside of this? How can we make it better? Because we know how bad it is, and there's enough people talking about how bad it is. You know, so we have the opportunity to show a different way of doing it. You know, and it's like bringing the light into. You know, you talk about the jails. You take the light into there, and you're not going to get them all. You might get 5. You might get 10 that are interested, that are able to stand up and go, you know what, and then they maybe take it back, and you maybe get another one, you know. So you're looking for the ones that are ready for it, you know.
Small victories into it, and then but with these small victories become big victories because it is just like that knock-on effect into it.
For me, Sean, it's one soul at a time every single day. That's the deal that I made a way back. I'm going to help one person every single day. And the way that I see it, the way it benefits most is when they get back to their house. I know what happens when a mum or a dad goes back to their house, and it's a complete different like appreciation for their partner and their wains, because they've switched off their stress. They get out of that survival state, you know, just grinding it out and try to get to this place that doesn't exist every single day. When they actually stop and have space, which is all I really do, I create the space. Once you go inside and you remember the stuff that's important. Now, obviously, that mommy or dad getting back into the house, you know, how the child's going to wake up the next day, which might be with a hug or with a breakfast or a conversation, you know, or, you know, something that's different from the way they've been living. Then the house gets better. The amount of people that come back, they bring their partner back, and then they may even bring their children that's dealing with some sort of whatever it is, which is just stress, all the different ailments and the conditions. When you teach a child how to switch off its stress, normally the symptoms disappear very, very quickly, just by learning to breathe properly. You know, so again, it's back to basics. It's really kind of putting your time into the stuff that you can affect. This is where when I look at the world, what can I do about that? What you're going to bring down the entire system? You're going to replace it? What, we need it.
I know.
We actually need to imagine the environment without the system. I know. Because it's supporting us, propping us, even as bad as it is, it's propping us all up.
I know what you mean. It's like I absolutely despise the people at the top, the elites, and I know what they're doing, but we do need a better system run by better people with an intention of like, you're always going to get, you need a system, you're always going to get bad people.
The whole thing needs to come down. If to do it properly and get it back.
You need to restart the thing.
That is the great reset, is basic, and that's by divine order. And the way they normally do it is with war. You know, the way they normally bring it in, which is kind of half terrifying. And when you look at the way the world is and a lot of the predictions over the years in terms of the way the world's going, it needs a big reset. You know, it needs to get to the point where there's so many people are suffering that we look at different ways of doing it. I've always felt that, you know, the spiritual awakening that needs to happen in this world. It's not going to happen because people even just lose their job, you know, or maybe they get a wee bit of like, you know, dis-ease or discomfort in their life. It comes when there's a complete reset in terms of they almost lose everything. At that point, you need to look at a different way of doing it. And that's where the wars and fighting against each other, unless somebody stands up that's lost a son or a daughter and says, enough's a fucking enough. No. This needs to stop. How do we stop that? How do we fix it? And Wayne Dyer, way back, used to talk about the Middle East and say, if I had my opportunity, I would just take millions and millions of people and surround the Middle East and just project, you know, the vibration of love and healing. And which sounds bonkers, but again, it's like that intention, that energy field. You know, when you're feeling good, when you're in meditation and you come back from it, what you bring to the world, people change around about you, of course they do.
No, you're float. I mean, I remember the two weeks that I was 6 weeks in Castle Huntly, and I was doing work every day, and I was like, it was the best I've ever felt. And I know I was on a different wavelength. It was like conversations are different. It's like you're kind of listening, but the bullshit doesn't it? It's weird.
It's a consciousness thing, and it's where you see that from.
But unfortunately, it's one of the ones where you get caught back up in a prison system, in an environment where you get caught back up, and I kind of lost that momentum. And then I go through wee phases of getting it, and then going back and getting and going back, and it's like Oh, it's just tough. It's no easy to do, and this is what I try and tell people. Like anybody that's going to try and go on that kind of spiritual journey, it's no easy, man. It's no.
Even you get it. The podcast I did last week was like modern man and the spiritual journey, you know. And I think of who I was before this, and then what I got during it, and then the journey after it. Ignorance is bliss.
I know.
You know, the realization of like how the world is and what it's all about, and you know the role that you play in it, and all the challenges we face. It's no easy.
No, and I get why people would even look at the way the world is and go, I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to know. And then I get why people like are on the right wing and on the left wing and they're screaming their head off. I get the point. So see people ask me now, where do you sit politically? I'm like, I don't know.
I don't watch
like,
it.
I don't even think, like, it's very hard, but there's a anger's a very hard emotion or whatever you want, like, to control. See, when you've got a lot of resentment, poison, it can poison your soul.
Yeah.
And I think acceptance is probably the hardest thing that you ever need to go through. And I think that's where I've got to. I've managed to get to a level of acceptance where it's certainly no where I want to be finally, but I've managed to cut a piece where I can't change the past and I can't change some people's minds on things, do you know what I mean? Certain things, and I need to kind of move on for my own. And I've been very lucky to have the partner that I had, do you know what I mean? 100%. But that same partner will go, I don't want to know anything about what you're watching on fucking Joe Rogan or anything. Do you know what I mean?
My wife was the same. You can't do anything about it. And I think acceptance is great. Forgiveness is so powerful.
Yeah.
But for me, it's all about transcendence. You know, how do you get beyond it? And that's a shift in consciousness. That's where I've seen it in one session. You know, somebody coming in dealt with just stuff you wouldn't wish on anybody. And they go through a process and they go inside and the light comes back on. And it's like bringing the candle into the darkened room. You know, at that point, do you ever get fully beyond it, especially the heavy stuff, the childhood stuff, the traumas? Do you ever get back to the way that it was meant to be?
No.
Probably not, but it's how you manage your way through it so that you can make the best of it.
It's like that, see, victimhood, Jim, that's one of the worst places to be in, because if I sit and I say to you, like, I was in prison for 15 years for something I never done and I had to struggle all the way through it and all that, you're going to go, fucking hell, like, that's sad. No, I could dine out in that. Like, I could go and say, would you expect me to fucking what my heads? I've got PTSD. Like, I could do that quite easily. Do you know what I mean? Now, does it affect me? Of course it does. Like, it affects me every day. But I've learned some skills to help work to get to where I'm at. But I also understand somebody who's been 3-4 year old and have been sexually abused all the way up right through their years, and then they get let down by every single person that's supposed to be caring for them. The trauma that they have, and they choose and go and choose addiction. I get that as well. So it's like the solutions that I say is, how do we get these people to learn that they can accept? Because some people get very angry with you. Like, I'll give you an example, Jim, right? When we were in Miscarriage of Justice, which is an amazing organisation. Absolutely love them, everybody in it, and this has got absolutely nothing I'm saying bad about that, but just when we were talking about things, I was talking about acceptance and talking about how we need to move on, and a few of the boys were like, you fucking mad, like, you get to fuck, like, I'm not even listening to this. I get it, like, I get that's coming for the hurt. How would you say, Jay, how would you try and turn somebody's victim mode off?
Well,
because
there's nothing in vain, you know. That I think the stuff that's happened to me and the people that I work with, and you as well. You know, when you go through that and you tell me your story, when people come to see me, Sean, I don't really listen to their story. You get to tell your story once, but at that point, you're a survivor. I'm a survivor. We're still standing, but we've dusted ourselves down and we're going, right, okay, how do we fix this? You know, so at that point. And for somebody like that that's been through the whole thing, that's a whole long process. That's probably taking somebody up into the mountains and putting them on a retreat and cleaning up their diet and switching off their nervous system, and then even finding the person that's ready for that. There's something absolutely like so powerful in terms of taking ownership of it, you know, taking the responsibility, you know, to see the role that you played in it, and wonder, you know, like, to make sense even as to how that stuff you got into that situation that enabled you to go down that road. But again, looking back and wondering why, and I don't deal with victims at all. The victim, I don't play. I really don't, because it doesn't make anything better. You know, so we're still standing. There are still possibilities to make it better. You can look back and see where it went wrong and how the wheels come off. But at some point, if the pain becomes bad enough, you've got the opportunity to do it in a different way.
I know.
You know, you need to let it go. You need to basically hand it, like, put it down. And at that point, you know, when you start to talk about, you know, acceptance, and then I remember forgiveness.
I know.
You know, some of the forgiveness stuff, which is, but the gift that you give yourself with forgiveness is so powerful. But then eventually to get to the point, I think of the stuff that happened to me and some of the childhood stuff, and it's like, how do you get beyond that? How do you transcend that and move forward? And for me, it's now the people that I help with it. You know, and again, it's a spiritual experience. It's a reconnection back to the divine. At a certain level, you know, if you go in and experience what I experienced in that meditation, it fixes everything it touches.
I know.
You know, it certainly takes it in the correct direction. You know, so at that point, if you have got a desire to heal, you know, and some people are too far gone. Again, it isn't for everybody.
Do you think people get comfortable in a trauma and make like basically virtually like create an identity around about trauma and
100%.
around about
you need to be aware of what the ego gets from it, you know, and the significance you get in telling your story. And you know, I see it a lot when people come into the group, into the Vortex group, you know, and it's, they want to tell their story all the time, and it's their way of attracting attention.
Aye.
You know, but that's why it's, for me, I'm ruthless with it. It's very humble. It's get up and do the work. It's keep it to yourself. It's, you know, there's none of that. You know, you're getting it for yourself. You know, and it takes work.
No, you do need to step away from. You need to step out of victim mode, and it's painful. It's very painful because what you're doing is, I always remember when Fiona said to me, she'd been going to like some of the miscarriage justice rallies and stuff, and she was like, Sean, it's honestly like I love it. It's great, but it's a lot of damaged and hurt. It's like a lot of anger there. Like it's no thingy. Some people were saying, "Oh, by the way, you'll not get the same Sean that went in there that came out. It'll be be damaged." And she was like, I don't think Sean's like that. I think Sean will be able to like hang in that. But she was obviously questioning herself as well. But I always remember the first time at a visit, she said, Sean, you're going to need to accept this. And I went, what? I was like, fuck, I can't believe you. She went, yeah, honestly, like I've been...
I'll kill you.
Because I think she'd been listening, she'd started reading a wee bit of Renee Brown and stuff like that. And she'd been getting... So... I remember actually being angry at her, like going, who the fuck, she was so right. Like,
and at that time you're in jail, that's not the time to hear that. So there's a timing thing with all of this. It's like the layers of the onion. You know, there's a certain time when you go inside and you stop and stuff starts to come up. You need to heal that bit first. Some of the stuff that I'm dealing with like 25 years later, I'm going, I thought I dealt with that. And something like a memory will come up, something that happened or something that wronged you, and it's like, holy fuck, I thought I dealt with that whole thing. So then at that point, you get a chance to then go in and make peace with that and then let that go and replace that, you know. So everybody's different, you know, depending on your environment you came from, Sean, as well, the type of human being that you are getting into that environment. You know, if you weren't as blessed as you were with your family and all that kind of stuff, the guy that went into jail would have been a different human being. You wouldn't be sitting here, you know. So the environment, as we know, is such a huge part of it.
No, definitely. And I think it's the Western culture, and I think by design, do you know what I mean? But it's like the Western culture it's all about materialism. It's about what you've got, how hard you work, and really nothing about connecting with yourself. I mean, you teach, I mean, my wee boy's only 2 and we try and say to him, like even at this age, I'll say to him, like me and Fiona, but I'll see my dad looking at me as if I'm mad because he'll do something and he'll draw on the wall and I'll be like, why are you doing that? And my dad's like,
that's what he kills him.
Why are you doing that? He's trying to give him a slap, you know what I mean? And I'm like, but they've got a different, like, obviously, it's just a generational thing.
That's what they grew up in.
And my ma's really good. She's kind of turned on, and my dad's brilliant with the way in a nod, you know what I mean? They're absolutely brilliant, but they've just got a different way. Like, look, and I'll say, so me and Fiona will say, like, breathe. See when he's angry, like, breathe. Do you know what I mean? Like, and he does it sometimes. Sometimes he'll, and he's only 2. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you're trying to put him, we try and see if we moved to his gym not long ago, and it's just been an absolute nightmare. Like, there's so much going on, and chest infection after chest infection, but we ended up, we go the way in, so see, like in the motor, see if we bicker, he goes, stop it, like he gets his word in, but we'll listen to him. Do you know what I mean? And we go, like, do you know what he's to? He probably knows more about, he's not conditioned yet. Do you know what I mean? So you can learn that from him. Do you know what I mean? You can learn that from him.
My son at 22 now, and what he's been on about his whole life. Nobody giving it to him, but just the tape sets on, the guitar, and then in the car, what he'd be listening to, you know, the stuff that he's picking up just by the way we were living.
Aye.
You know, so they've grown up in a loving environment. You know, we never fought in the house.
Aye.
The studies that you see, you know, in terms of the impact, the negative impact, you know, like kids being born into these environments with just any kind of stress, you know. So it's so important to realise the impact. You know, the
So why
enjoyment.
do you think schools are this is where I don't, why do you think schools are introducing this kind of stuff? This kind
I've no
of
idea. I've no idea. I mean, some of the information, when I came across Patrick McKeown 4 or 5 years ago, who's the oxygen advantage and Buteyko method, probably the authority in breathwork in the world just now, he was talking about how, you know, some of this information's been about for over 100 years. You know, just the ability to breathe properly and with function, and how a child, you know, when a child breathes in and out through its mouth, you're basically generating stress. We're designed to breathe in and out through our nose. You know, so when you go to bed and you're breathing through your mouth, your nervous system's getting chased by a lion. You know, and he goes on to talk about how it's impossible for any human being to reach their full potential, you know, if you're mouth breathing, because you're generating stress.
Aye.
Now, that stuff has been known forever, and nobody knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was working with one of the most decorated Olympians ever recently, and I asked him about how much he learned about breathwork. I mean, you know, he's a vet and how much effort goes into this, and he had nothing at all, no training in the power of the breath, which is all about obviously how you ship energy, you know, how you ship the lactate. And somebody at that level has no, like, nothing basic, anything to do with the significance of the breath, you know. So why it's held back, I don't know. You know, is it to keep us sick? Is it to keep us, you know, suppressed? Is it to keep us no well in this ease? Possibly. I do know there's a great wave just now of awakening in terms of solutions, and enough people talking about it. I know so many people now that are getting up every morning and sitting in meditation and are great mums and great dads and great human beings, and they're taking love into the world. You know, but if you'd have said that to them 6 months ago before they got on about it, talk about brickies and joiners that work in building sites that are sitting during their break, sitting for 5 minutes, like doing some breath work to switch off their nervous system and feel good again. You know, and it's like, it's to normalise it. You know,
definitely.
That's very much what I'm doing with this stuff. It's like, I know how it sounds when I talk about it, but it's like, that's my job, that's my work.
Jim, listen, see 30 years ago, if you were going to say, if you'd say we're normalised cocaine in society, people would have laughed at you, meant no chance, you'll know. But it is. It's normalised in this society. There's no anywhere you can go when it's not there. So it can be normalised, and you're always going to get like people saying, like as you say, like,
it needs to be experienced.
You know I mean? You're going to get that.
It needs to be an experience. I don't care who it is. See, the minute I get somebody who's got an open heart and an open mind and a reason for being there and wants to be there, and they've got stuff to get through. If you bring somebody in, you can't deny it. It happens every single time. It's not the kind of thing you come and you don't get. You know, you're going to get something. And what you find is when we reconnect back into the self, every single area of your life gets better. It's not just one area. So the traditional way of doing things would be to work on your job, your relationship with your missus, your health and well-being.
Even your thought, it's not that like the way you start thinking like about how to fix problems that you would never, like everything comes.
It's inspiration. I mean? It's literally, when you sit in meditation, the plan is to sit in spirit. It's to get inspired. I hate motivation. Motivation doesn't work. It lasts for about 20 minutes. So to be inspired, it's like the small number of like
purpose,
43, 5:30 I'm online every like 6 days a week now. That's not work. You know, to get up and sit in meditation and take people through breathwork live every single day just about, you know, and it pulls you towards it. I never once had to set my alarm to go up out of bed and sit in meditation during the night. Why? Because I was healing myself. I was trying to discover what God was. So nobody had to tell me to do that. I never told anybody. Even my mum, like 5 years ago, she passed, like, what do you do? What does he actually do? And my wife, God bless her for years, what does he do? So at that point, you kind of go, this is what it is.
I know you need to experience it.
You need to come in and lie down and shut the fuck up. Get out your head, get back into your heart and experience what I'm talking about. And then at that point, if it's not for you, great. But if you're struggling or you're looking for answers, in this time where healing is required, in my experience, it fixes everything it touches. It does. And it doesn't matter what it is, how bad and how dark, and some of the stories I could tell you, and people come in and it's one experience. It's like the worst business model in the world. You reconnect back in, the light comes back in, and then you're at a different level to go through your life, and everything changes, and it happens very quickly.
No, definitely. And just as we're coming up to the end of the podcast, Jim, it's been a fascinating podcast, and your story is absolutely amazing. And as I say, it's like I would tell anybody to go and experience the Vortex Centre. Look up. How do we find you? How do we find you on the
online? Facebook, Instagram. I'm even on TikTok now. I've got TikTok.
Oh, you're on TikTok now?
The people that are Michael and Phil.
TikTok's toxic, but
apparently, so I don't follow. I'm a wee TikTokers now. I don't watch it, but everything's online. There's an entire system. I've got an online program now called The Program, which is probably 300-400 hours of videos. So since January I've been recording everything. People would come and it's like, how do we get that experience? There was nothing recorded. Now every single breathwork session I've done is recorded. We're taking it to the world. So I've just finished the Scottish tour. We did that. It was a free tour. We went to 4 different locations. You can get around about it in so many ways. Come to the Vortex for either workshops, for one-on-ones. I've got a retreat on this weekend. We're away for the retreat back into nature. The ceremony, that's called. The ceremony is a reconnection back to the self. All sorts of good stuff going on. I've got 2 retreats planned before the end of the year. There's so many different ways.
There was one thing I've kind of missed, like, and obviously I could have spoke all day, Jim, but it was like about what you think of the kind of ayahuasca and that kind of stuff and the kind of plant medication, but I can
answer it very quickly if you want. I don't believe, well, the way that I did it was just sitting in silence for 17, 18 years every single day. And then what I got from that experience, then the plants came in for me later on. And what I found myself in those ceremonies was basically holding the space, you know, because of my relationship with the divine. I think I think ayahuasca is too much. I think psilocybin done properly as a spiritual, you know, like a process and not a trip. With somebody that knows what they're doing in terms of being able to hold the space, and then the training as well required going into that in terms of breath work, and that's where the breath work, Nicole, calming the nervous system and going inside, because once it comes up, you know, you need to remember with these tools, you need to be ready. You've got to be prepared. So you can't just, I love the DMT, I don't agree with, and the synthetic I don't agree with. People jump in and doing ayahuasca and just too far, no spiritual practice, no spirit, and then they basically
support after. I think you need to be really in the right headspace, don't you? It's dangerous.
There's a timing for all of that kind of stuff.
And again, it's going commercial. I mean, I was looking, I think I looked something up, like just to see how much, it was like 25 grand to go and retreat in Peru. And it's like, and you're just like, oh God, this is.
And yeah, I hear horror stories, even in Scotland. Some of the people I know that are holding ayahuasca retreats and just some of the stuff that's involved. And again, it always goes back to the same bit where there's human beings involved. You know, the 7 deadly sins. It's just, and again, what's the intention? You know, and the people that's attracting, you know, you see where society is just now. You know, so I don't believe you need it.
To get DMT vapes and all that for boys just to get mad with it, and you're like, it's a strong drug, man. Like, you shouldn't be playing about with it. Do you know what I mean? It's
terrifying.
But listen, Jim, I'm going to give you the last message because it's been absolutely amazing having you on. But just a wee message to any of the viewers that are watching that might be struggling with any kind of addiction, mental health, any kind of stuff like that. What would you say, Jim?
There's always a way. The way is the way, as I say, you know, back to balance, back into nature, back to the way that it's meant to be. That's what I'm all about. There's nothing to learn, it's about remembrance. So there's a process. And it doesn't matter what you're coming in with, you know, because it's inside of us. What I discovered is the bit that's in me is in everybody. So once you reconnect back to that, everything gets better. And then depending on where you are, how far you want to take it, you can take this to the nth degree. And any healing, I do believe, can take place. I've seen it, Sean. I've seen it with my own eyes, and it can happen very, very quickly. You know, so hope is a starter for 10. I love faith, but then also the process, the tools and the techniques to get the experience. Because once it happens once, then the world changes. And again, you know, people, a lot of the time, they don't ever go back and they get the transcendence. I'm all about the transcendence. This is where, like, the 12 steps and, you know, being in that environment. I believe we need to get beyond it so we stop telling the story, you know, so we can basically move on and get to that place I do believe we were supposed to get to. So there always is a way.
Brilliant. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Jim McFadyen.
Thanks,
cheers.
Thank you.